And the Toronto Raptors lose 120 to 135, but it was not for a lack of effort. There was a lot of effort. Unfortunately, there weren't a lot of healthy bodies for the Toronto Raptors, who got the good news, I guess, before the game that Tyrese Maxey was a late scratch, and there was some hope that RJ Barrett would play this game, but he did not. And the Raptors tank continues, in large part due to a few former Raptors, Cameron Payne, Kyle Lowry, and yes, Jeff Doughton Jr. This channel's, Messiah. I don't know what would you call Jeff Doughton Jr. Our avatar, the emblem for everything we love about basketball. Tough. 13 straight losses. This team is edging very close to the 17 games lost in a row that they accomplished, I believe, in 96, 97. And yikes. But if you are someone who is forward thinking and thinking long term for this team, and if you're someone who's been watching a little bit of that March Madness thing that's going on right now, you got to be rooting for draft picks right now. You got to be rooting for draft picks. And there's a lot of reasons why you'd want to be rooting for draft picks. So I have not watched more basketball in my life than I have in basically the last 72 hours, in which I have not done any lives. So I'm not monetizing all of this basketball watching. I'm just absorbing. I'm absorbing. I'm observing. I'm making notes. I'm watching these players. And what's super interesting is, honestly, I find the NCAA, the product right now, is so much better than the NBA product. So if you are not watching NCAA women's hoops right now, or even NCAA men's hoops right now, and you are instead saying, no, 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 I won't watch college kids play, I'd rather watch the pros, you're insane. I promise you're missing out on the better product. Tomorrow, we'll definitely do a post game for that. LSU, Iowa. Oh, man. You telling me you don't want to watch that? Millions of people will tune in to watch Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese and Flau'jae Johnson, and I will definitely be one of those people. Um, a lot of incredible notes on the NCAA. On the men's side, of course, today NC State with a huge upset over North Carolina. I don't say huge, but they were 7.5 favorites going into the game. And I could have seen that coming. I honestly could have. And it's just NC State is just such a joyous team to watch. They have a lot of veterans. DJ and DJ are awesome. And DJ Burns is just quickly morphing into one of my favorite college basketball players. And Kyle Filipowski is not one of my favorite college basketball players, but also interesting to note, Kyle could definitely be someone that is targeted by the Toronto Raptors with that Indiana pick. So I thought it would be a really good game to get familiarized with his game. Also, Zach Edey, Canadian boy, puts up 40 points, 16 rebounds as the Boilermakers make their first Final Four berth in my lifetime. So 1980 was the last time Purdue was in the Final Four. On the women's side, of course, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about all that stuff. But first, let's talk about the Raptors, man. Let's just talk about the game that was here. The Toronto Raptors give up historic numbers to the Philadelphia 76ers. Also, give this video a like if you like the new studio setup. It's not too dissimilar from the old studio setup, in fairness, but it is very different for a couple of key reasons. Number one, I feel a hell of a lot better in here because I completely renovated the entire thing. Those of you who remember the old one probably remember this bookshelf being very different in the background, but generally it's the same setup because there's only so much you can do with 35 square feet. But nevertheless, there's a lot more space here. I feel a lot better in here. This is great. I often used to do these lives super late at night and get into these conversations with people, especially I'm sure during draft night or whatever. It's going to be like these late lives. And it was right next to our bedrooms. So my girlfriend was often interrupted by it. And I was like, man, I really want to create a better studio environment. So the cool part is in here, I'm going to be able to set some stuff up. I'm going to improve the lighting a little bit. I'm probably going to add some soundscapes in here. Also, the best part of this is in the other place, there were windows. So I was often, and there were no blackout blinds. So I was often dealing with shifty lighting and stuff. Here I have 100% control over the lighting, which I love. It'll create a consistent look to the podcast. It's a good thing. I got to tell you, like my last episode on Player's Choice, I really hated the fact that the lighting kept changing. But yeah, nevertheless, live and learn. Been renovating the house and all that stuff, and it's just been a hell of the last 3 days. And let's end out March with our final live of March by talking about what the hell is going on with the Toronto Raptors, losers of 13 straight. So the Toronto Raptors give up crazy 3-point numbers. Cam Payne hits 6, Kelly Oubre hits 6, Nick Batum hits 5, Buddy Hield, who probably would have been the best bet to hit 10, hits 3, and Kyle Lowry hits 3 as well, including a really big one late. And Tobias Harris only hits 1, but he hits 1 late as well. And I just think that it's weird to say, Kelly Oubre Jr. is a minimum contract guy. Kyle Lowry is a minimum contract guy. I haven't checked, but I'm pretty sure Cameron Payne and Mo Bamba make a combined less than, they probably make less money combined than Bruce Brown. I'll bet my life on that, actually. So really the only big money guy who was really playing tonight was, Buddy Hield is a bit of a big money guy, and Tobias Harris. The Sixers were missing their 2 big guys, and it's not even like they have 2 big money guys. In fairness, Tyrese Maxey is not even extended yet, so it's really Joel Embiid who's the big money guy over there. But man, this was interesting. Bruce Brown had one of his better games as a Raptor, to be honest. Largely just comes down to shot making, right? Grady Dick, I thought, had some really, really impressive stretches without the basketball. I thought he was like really interesting without the basketball. And also I thought defensively, whenever the Sixers tried to size him up and go one-on-one with him, I thought he performed better than expected. And he forced a lot of misses. He even forced an air ball late. I thought it was pretty cool. Kick-ass production saying Bane and Bamba are on minimums. I'm not surprised. Sorry, Payne and Bamba are on minimums. I'm not surprised. So I don't know why I thought Mo Bamba would have been on a little bit more than a minimum, but that's interesting. So yeah, Kelly Oubre, Cameron Payne, Mo Bamba, Kyle Lowry, all on minimums. So you have 4 minimum guys, according to Kick-Ass Productions. And then you had Tobias Harris, who's the big money guy for the Sixers. And honestly, like Tobias was good for them. As an isolation scorer and just someone that you could just throw the ball into, but he was not like the guy who did everything. And really what it comes down to, when you lose a guy like Tyrese Maxey is who creates pressure, who creates the rim pressure, who gets the offense organized, who puts, who draws the second defender and who draws the help, all of these things, but yeah, I think Kyle Lowry did an incredible job, just admirably, just setting everyone up, finding guys backdoor, making sure the ball was moving, making sure the offense was organized, and really just reminding Raptor fans of what an impactful player he can be. Just some of the cool, nifty stuff that he does as a veteran. One thing that came to mind was that foul he drew on Kelly Olynyk. I just thought it was so interesting. Like, he's just such a unique player in his abilities to contribute through his mind, and he's always going to be a positive. And last year I spent a lot of time talking about how Fred VanVleet would never achieve that level of mastery because, again, it's the selflessness. It's the way he plays, right? Nameless saying, we're about to blow by this 16-game losing streak. We're about to be set 21 easy. I wouldn't be so sure. I think at some point pride does kick in. And I think pride kicked in tonight. The Raptors, I think performed a lot better than they did against New York. Granted, this is not New York. There is no superstar on the other end. There is a big, big, big gap between Jalen Brunson and Tobias Harris, or Jalen Brunson and Kelly Oubre, even though, everyone's going out for big numbers against the Raptors right now. I thought Javon Freeman-Liberty was interesting, especially in transition. Again, he's just been a catalyst for like motion and movement and not sticking the ball, and that's been consistent across the board, regardless of who plays for the Raptors. Another big, shot attempt game for Gary Trent Jr. and Jordan Nwora. They combined for 38 shot attempts. That's never going to be a recipe for success. But honestly, right now, who would you rather take those shots right now? There's probably a school of thought where you say maybe Grady should take those shots right now. Let's get those reps in. But I don't think Darko believes in putting up reps that way. There's also another, let's say, component to this game, which is you have a lot of free agents, and the Sixers have some available cap space, and they have a dire need at the wing. Assuming that Buddy Hield is not their long-term solution, assuming Tobias Harris is not their long-term solution, the Raptors may actually present some long-term solutions for the Sixers. And two of those players are Gary Trent Jr. and Bruce Brown. Especially if the Sixers strike out on OG Anunoby, which they're expected to, there aren't exactly a ton of wings lining up the free agent market. So if you're looking for any reasons why your wings had such a big night against the Sixers, it's because everybody knows who has cap space. And Nwora is a free agent. Bruce Brown is a free agent. Gary Trent is a free agent. I mean, Bruce Brown may be a free agent, but I very highly doubt that the Raptors pick up his options. So that being said, it is very, very interesting to see all three players kind of pop off. And then, of course, you have the other guys, which is Mohamedou Gay and, Kobe Simmons, Kobe Jordan Simmons, which is interesting. I did not know his middle name was that. At some point, you do get worried with this team because they're so bad that you just worry that another team might sleep on them being so bad. And they're such tryhards as well. Like everyone who's playing right now is trying so hard. They're just failing because of, well, ultimately they're failing because of a lack of talent. Also, not to be too super conspiratorial, but I've kind of noticed far more often than not that whenever the Raptors get any momentum, Kelly Olynyk will invariably create some sort of turnover or something. Like he will take a dumb shot or he'll turn it over point blank. Like he was efficient tonight, but 5 turnovers again, it's very weird. And the timing of these turnovers is getting super spooky as well. So maybe he's in on it. Like, I don't know. Like, it's weird. Like, I'm not saying like, I mean, geez, maybe subconsciously he knows that the Raptors are trying to lose games. Like, I don't know. But like, it is just getting weird how often he and Bruce Brown are often the people who end a run. Do you know what I mean? Like momentum is such a strong thing in basketball. Like if you watched UConn, watch UConn like 2 days ago or yesterday, they went on a 30-0 run and they just could not turn off the water, right? Illinois can just not turn off the water. And it was crazy to see that how like the thing just became like quicksand. And momentum is such a strong component of how basketball games are split open. And it seems like whenever the Raptors do get momentum, they will often clip their own wings by doing something like throwing the ball off of their foot, or having an air ball, or just handing the ball to the other team, allowing for transition. Like typically, coaches have to waste timeouts to end runs. The Raptors tend to clip their own runs a lot, and I don't think it's possible to be this timely with your clippings, if that makes sense. So I have no doubt that all these guys are trying. Like Kelly Olynyk obviously had a really big game in terms of like box score, stuff. Like he's really like the point guard on the court. Like he's the guy who's creating. And it creates for a very efficient and very interesting offense, where you're really running a lot of your actions through what's basically a 6'11" point center. But man, 18 points, 11 assists, 5 turnovers. And yeah, take a quick look at the team stats before we turn our attention over to callers and other things. I mean, the Raptors do get out rebounded pretty handily. They managed to out assist the Sixers, which is not easy to do when the other team is effectively just so much more efficient than you are across the board. The Sixers shoot 56% from 3. When is the last time I remember a team shooting 56% on 43 attempts? I'm not sure I've ever seen it happen against the Raptors. Someone fact check me on that. This feels history making for all the wrong reasons. In terms of points in the paint, the Raptors dominate that. I think they got to the front of the rim a lot. I think Jordan Nwora was a really big part of that. Fast break points, the Raptors win off of that. It was just crazy shooting for the Sixers. Just for the record, I don't think the Sixers played well at all. Okay. They shot well. They did not play well. Their defense was ass. And one could argue they were down even more talent than the Raptors were in terms of just what they're missing on the court. They're missing an MVP candidate and they're missing, a star, like a all-star, like a high-level all-star in Tyrese Maxey. Like they're missing a lot. The Raptors are obviously missing quite a bit with, I honestly, like, it sucks because in another world, the Raptors don't leak oil this way coming down the stretch. Like they're not this bad. And we do get to see some interesting basketball. Like maybe we get to see Tyrese Maxey versus Mayo quickly. Like that would have been an interesting matchup in a competitive game, especially if the Raptors were still fighting for play-in spot. But the Raptors are not fighting for a play-in spot right now. The Raptors are basically fighting for lottery balls. And, we talked about the math on this. It's pretty conclusive at this point that if the Toronto Raptors stay where they are, there's still like a really solid chance that they're going to lose that draft pick regardless. That being said, there have been some very, very interesting players that I've been looking into a lot. And I got to say, if the Raptors stay put at 6, I'm very comfortable. I'm very comfortable because there's about 8 to 9 players in this draft that I'm really starting to warm up on. So let's talk about a few of them. I did watch a lot of Zach Edey. Realized that this community is very Canadian. And a lot of people here like to talk about Zach Edey like he's going to be something very good. And while I remain dubious on that, I will acknowledge that his analytics are off the charts. Like crazy, crazy numbers. That being said, he is 7'5". Like he's 7'5" playing against children, man. Like, I mean, you really do have to put this into context. Like some of those advantages. But I have to say I was impressed by how he was moving today. I thought his conditioning showed up a little bit, in a good way. I love the F-bomb in the post game for Purdue. I thought it was really cool. I don't really know too much about his personality or who he is, but a feisty competitor who can move up and down the court a little bit better than I thought, who has good touch around the rim, who has like really good shot blocking, potential. Maybe he does have the potential to be a change of pace backup big. I'm not seeing a star. I'm not, but there might be extenuating circumstances beyond basketball that would implore the Raptors to consider Zach Edey, especially if some of their other targeted players are off the board at 16 or 17 or 18, whatever the hell they're drafting. Because with the run that he's on with the Boilermakers right now, I don't think he's going to make it past 25. There was a lot of talk earlier about how he might be a second round pick. I don't see it. I don't think he's going to slip to the second round. There's just way too much. There's not enough talent in this draft for him to slip to the second round. Yes, in most drafts, I do believe he's a second round pick. But in this draft, I feel like he's going to go in the 20s. If the Raptors reach for him at 18, it will be largely because somebody that they like a lot better just went off the board. And I do want to say that if they do that, there's a couple of reasons why you would want to do something like this. Number one, he is extremely efficient. And with the league going smaller and smaller, it's possible that some of the advantages that he has in the college game will extend to this. There's also just enough touch that I think that, unlike a guy like Jakob Poeltl, I think he can develop like a midi post up like jumper. I think he might be. I'm seeing a little bit more Yao in him than Jakob Poeltl. Do you know what I mean? Or Mark Eaton or Eric Montross. Like there's a little bit more skill there than I initially thought there would be. I thought a lot of it was just him overpowering and shooting over guys, but there's actually like some touch and some feel to his game, which armed with a coach like Darko and guys like Jama, again, vantage point is vantage point. 7'5" is 7'5". He sees right over the defense. If they could develop his playmaking and, just get him reasonably proficient as a drop big, yeah, there's a very, very, I don't want to say strong, but there's an outside chance, at least if he wants it, if he works hard enough for it, that he could be a taller Brook Lopez. Holy shit. So yeah, if the Raptors see the upside on that, definitely take a chance. However, I find myself a little bit more enamored with another big in this draft. Donovan Clingan. I think he's been really, really interesting. And watching UConn just shut the water off was so interesting to see how he moves on defense. So let's just take a look at some of my tweets because I've been tweeting a lot. And if you're not following Pendance Basketball on Twitter, definitely do that. The reason I've been tweeting a lot is because some of these names are very new to me and sometimes I'll forget. So I just want to go through a few things. I'm just going to go through my tweets and we're just going to, y'all can still hear me, right? I think you can hear me here. Here we go. Okay, so Nikola Jokic today was incredible. He put up a triple-double over the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cavaliers had a fully healthy roster. Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, Donovan Mitchell, and Jamal Murray did not play. And Jokic is just crazy. Like he's so good right now. And I understand voter fatigue and you don't want to give the guy the award and you want to maybe give it to Shea or Luka or whatever, but man, shut up about this. Like it's not close. Okay. He is definitely there. In terms of storylines that I am happy about, NC State is going to be there for both sides. That's the men's side and the women's side. Very cool. DJ Burns Jr., man. Holy shit, this guy was so interesting to watch today. Give me a yay or a W in the chat if you watched him play. Dude, like the poise, the joy, the humility, the passion, the fleet-footedness. I don't know. He's like a ballerina. He's like a 6'10", 300-pound ballerina. Like he was awesome. And that team is awesome. Like they're so composed. I don't know if they're gonna beat Purdue. I don't. I got to tell you, regardless of how much you may expect me to be rooting for Purdue because of Zach Edey, I am definitely rooting for NC State. I want this guy to get drafted. And I don't know if he's going to get drafted. I'm pretty sure he won't get drafted. He's a 5-year player at this point. And honestly, like, yikes, he's probably not going to get drafted. But if he is undrafted, this is one guy that I would love for the Raptors to look at in their summer league. See if you can get him down in terms of weight. He has a really interesting jump shot. He has really good touch. He has really good hands. He has incredible hand-eye coordination. His hand-eye coordination and his footwork is incredible. I see a lot of that Kenny Lofton stuff, but he's bigger than Kenny Lofton. He's like a point guard at 6'10", 6'9", 6'10". So I would love to see the measurements on him. He needs to get into shape, and I just really like him as a player. There's not enough talent in this draft for him to completely get overlooked. Like he was a force, and I am shocked out of my mind shocked that they didn't double him. Like shit. Yeah, 40 points, 16 rebounds, as I mentioned, for Zach Edey. Isaiah James. Wow. This girl, like, I was so impressed. Yeah, like just an incredible thing. A little bit of basketball history here for UConn. Okay, so, Coach Gino made quite a bit of a stir by saying that Paige Bueckers is the top player in the country and he's coaching the best player in the country. And a lot of people threw a lot of, shit about it, and they were just very upset, and they're just like, what are you talking about? Caitlin Clark's better. Look, man, different schools of thought, and we definitely have to talk about this because I think this is one of the big blind spots in basketball in terms of how much do you value creation, load, and how much should you be penalized for having better teammates. Honest to goodness, I think Paige is the best player in college basketball, men or women's. Like please understand, I'm not saying that as if she was playing in the men's league or whatever. I'm saying for her sport, I think she is the best player in college basketball. like whoever the men's equivalent of that is, whether it's Donovan Clingan or Zach Edey or whatever, I think she's the best. Okay, that's just my opinion, and I've felt that way about her for a very long time. But what's interesting is she's not the best Husky. So in her third year with the Huskies this year, right now, she's had 11.7 win shares, which is ridiculous numbers, really. Like we're talking like truly, truly like in a shortened season, nuts. Okay, Diana Taurasi had 10. Brianna Stewart, I don't know how many of you follow WNBA, but Brianna Stewart is a friggin' awesome player. She won 4 championships with the Yukon Huskies back in the day. And that's before NIL, before everything. But man, she was incredible. And she still is incredible. Arguably, but kind of not arguably, is the best player in the WNBA today. She had 12.5. But man, shout outs to Maya Moore for having 13.8. So basically, Gino has been coaching. Coach Gino has coached some of the best players in college basketball, like over the last 25 years. So he would know. He would definitely know who the fuck the best player in the country is, and he wouldn't cap about this. He's saying Paige is the best player in the country. Honestly, tomorrow night, I can't wait for her to show it. I can't wait. And yeah, I mean, in terms of yesterday, honestly, one of my happiest days of hoops, I literally all day, 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, was it 1 o'clock? 3:30. So 1 o'clock, we started with LSU, Flau'jae Johnson, crazy performance, those huge blocks down the stretch, a lot of foul trouble, you know, LSU, composure, would they crumble? Would they not? You know, they've been kind of like just, man, they're missing Alexis Morris right now. But yeah, like I mean, they were good. And Angel Reese, I mean, a lot of people talking a lot of shit about Angel Reese. We'll talk about, you know, some of the storylines that are coming out of that. But I was rooting for LSU and they won, so I was very happy. Iowa was the second game, 3:30, you know, in the afternoon. Obviously, a lot of people tuning in to watch Caitlin Clark, and she put on a masterclass. I was so impressed. You know, a lot of people say she's Steve Nash. Sorry, a lot of people say she's Steph Curry. I saw a lot of Steve Nash in her yesterday, like the transition play, some of the heads up passing, some of the threading of the needle. Like, I was shocked because honestly, I've watched a lot of Caitlin Clark, and I don't know if she could pass like that. I know she leads the country in assists, but she's not leading on high volume, number one. She dominates the ball. She has really high usage. So honestly, I didn't really rate her as a passer until yesterday. That's crazy to say because I've watched a lot of her, even going back to grade school, high school, I've watched her. But um, yeah, it was an impressive passing clinic. I don't know if it was a one-off, but like, yeah, she's always been a good passer. Yesterday I saw great passing. Um, Juju Watkins, oh my God. Holy shit. Like, what a great performance. Close game, but like pulled it through down the stretch. And Paige Bueckers, honestly, the least, I mean, Paige and Flau'jae did it in a completely different way. They did it like defensively and offensively and as teammates. Like, honestly, if you're asking me who am I rooting for in this bunch, I'm rooting for Paige, obviously. After that, I'm rooting for Flau'jae. After that, I'm rooting for Juju. And after that, I'm rooting for Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark is my least favorite player on that page right there. And there's my order. Um yeah. Speaking of storylines, there's a lot of storylines about LSU right now, and it feels oddly racial. And there's a component to it which is weird. And if you read the LA Times, you know, the entire article that is here, I mean, it's honestly disturbing, like how they've tried to portray this team as almost like thugs, right? And it's been happening for a long time. The media does not like people who do not like the media. It's a strange thing. I don't think that you should hold it against people for not liking you. I don't think people are bad because they don't think that you're important. That's a really stupid way to think about things. Um, oh, that's interesting. I was just going to say that. Um, I mean, I just think that they represent something. You know, they're bold. Their coach is really bold. Their coach is not like the media. They themselves have sometimes been a little catty with the media. They're very outspoken. They taunt their opponents. And, they maybe made the worst, maybe it made a bit of a bad mistake by pissing off a lot of middle America last year by taunting Caitlin Clark, who is everyone's golden girl, right? So there's a lot, at stake here. But in terms of what is really at stake, I'll present it to you very, very bluntly. Caitlin Clark represents something, and that's not her fault that she represents it, but she does represent it. Just like it was never Larry Bird's fault that he represented something, and it was never really his intention. And Larry Bird is not a racist, and Larry Bird is not a homophobe, and Larry Bird is probably very progressive. And Larry Bird was just one of those guys. I mean, I remember one of my favorite quotes of Larry Bird growing up was he used to say he got offended when opposing coaches put a white player on him. Like, he just get pissed off. He was just like, that's disrespectful that you think a white player could actually stop me. And it's probably thoughts like that that always made Larry Bird really cool with other black players. This whole, what is Iowa? Where is Iowa? I mean, if you've ever been to Iowa, And the component here is LSU is black. I mean, their star player is black. She's unapologetically herself. She's very loud. She's kind of obnoxious. I love her. I love Angel Reese a lot. I think she's a great player. I think she's a competitor. She reminds me a lot of Kevin Garnett, to be honest. Like, the way that she plays, the way that she competes. Like, do you know what's driving people to the women's game right now? I mean, everyone says it's Caitlin Clark. Everyone says it's Caitlin Clark. It's not Caitlin Clark, bro. It's Angel Reese. It's both. I mean, don't get me wrong. Obviously, Caitlin Clark is a huge part of it, and Paige Bueckers is a huge part of it. But for years, I feel that people have been complaining about the competition level on the men's side. There aren't rivalries anymore. Guys are all buddy. Everyone's just like chilling with each other. Everyone's training in the off season. There aren't real, like, there's nothing at stake. Do you know what I mean? Like Jordan versus Larry Bird, there was something at stake. Larry versus Magic, there was something at stake. Isaiah versus Jordan, there was something at stake. John Starks versus Jordan, it was really Jordan versus everybody, right? This buddy jersey exchange crap, it doesn't vibe with your old school sports fan. A lot of those people have checked out of basketball, right? There's also a component which is extremely socially progressive, political about the NBA product. It started in the bubble with a lot of the Black Lives Matter stuff, a lot of the kneeling for the national anthem. And I don't think that the NBA would ever admit that they lost a lot of their conservative viewership, but they did. And it showed in their ratings. It showed in the ratings of the bubble. A lot of people just tuned out. And I think that the combination of three things is driving people to the women's game in college basketball. Number one, it is extremely star driven right now. And the stars are stars. Like Juju Watkins is a star. Like, she's a fucking star. She will be like, when she goes to the WNBA, she will be a top 3 pick, a top 2 pick, and a really good one. She might be number 1 overall pick in 3 years or 2 years. She's very young right now. Flage will be a top 3 pick. She's currently mocked, I think, next year's draft or the year after. She's mocked as a top 3 pick. She's really good. She was a freshman last year. She won a championship with LSU. She will be very good. Angel Reese is probably not a superstar at the next level, but she will be a starter in the WNBA next year. Caitlin Clark is revolutionizing what it means to be a shooter in the WNBA, and it will evoke copycats and people who do what she does, maybe even better than what she does, because there will be better athletes. There are tons of better athletes. There are better athletes than her on her team. And you'll see it. You'll see that evolution continue to grow, right? Look, it took a lot of women to get here. That's fair. Pretty cool guy saying it's not just conservatives, dude. Please don't forget independent that just want identity politics out of sports. I agree. I'm one of those people. I don't necessarily need politics shoved in my face with sports. Personally, I'm not really for it. And I don't particularly like the fact that if you say that, people will say, but you're against progress. No, there's every other sphere of life includes politics. I don't necessarily think basketball and football necessarily need to become all about politics. However, I do think that players have a right to express if they have something on their mind. I don't think it's wrong that LeBron James um, asks for a moment of silence for Trayvon Martin if he did that, or I don't think that it's a problem at all that Steven Jackson would go on an extended uh, podcasts and stuff like that about all this stuff. I don't think it's a problem at all, and I think that it should be there. But when it's league mandated, when it's everywhere on the branding, when it becomes a part of the branding of the league, I think then that becomes an issue. And I think the NFL kind of did a pretty good job of just nipping this in the butt, and some people had a lot of problems with that. But at the end of the day, this is a sports business, right? It's not a politics business. Again, different schools of thought on this. But I think that the women's college game, it's star driven. So that's one thing. It's not political, right? It's not as political as, there's some element of the gender politics that are definitely coming up a lot. And I think a lot of the stuff is really stupid. Like, I don't know, Caitlin Clark playing the NBA. No, she can't. Shut the fuck up. But the point here is it's not nearly as buddy. Do you know what I mean? Like it's superstar driven. It's not buddy. And there's real shit at stake here. Like the rivalries create stakes. And, I think that's a good thing. I think it's a great thing. So yeah. I think it's just like a combination of just the NBA and the men's product just not being very tough. And, for years people have said, that people won't support the women's basketball because the girls are not as athletic, or they're not as this, or they're not as that. And then they can't dunk very much, or, they're not as, athletic, or, the stuff that they do is not as impressive. And I don't think you realize that once you made shooting such a huge part of basketball, and you took a lot of the post play and the driving and the dunking out of it, you really did open up the door to gender parity across this particular sport, right? Where the game is not as much about speed and dunking and jumping anymore. Look at the guys who are really dominating the NBA. It's Jokic. Could there be a female Jokic at some point who's just like 6'8" and just really passes the ball really well and can see over the defense and has great footwork and hand-eye coordination? Of course there can be. There's probably never going to be a female Michael Jordan or a female LeBron James, but could there be like a female Luka Doncic or a female Steph Curry? Hell yeah, there can be. And you're seeing it. You're seeing more and more of it. And I think that the female game is just going to grow and grow. And I think that it's great. I think it's a great thing that I have choices now, choices beyond, NCAA, EuroLeague, NBA. There's actually like a real choice here. And I think hopefully the competition from women and from the women's game, as much as people would like to laugh at that, trust me when I say that the ratings for tomorrow night are going to dwarf most NBA games. And it's a women's college game. I'm pretty sure that more people are watching women's college hoops right now than men's college hoops right now. That is a massive shift. And this is not just one player. It's not just one player. I know people who 5 years ago would have told me they'd never watch women's sports, who are naming me third and fourth players on LSU right now. And I'm just like, yes, this is great. Look, as an early adopter of the WNBA, as someone who watched a lot of WNBA even in 2005, 2006, who wanted to support the game, who grew up around a lot of strong women, a lot of hoopers, women who could probably whoop your ass in basketball. I've always been a strong proponent for the women's game. And I've always thought that it was kind of ridiculous when people talked about like how it wasn't as good or whatever. It's just younger. It's younger. And there doesn't need to be all this chauvinism. And there's always going to be some asshole who talks about, I don't know, Caitlin Clark isn't pretty, or Paige Bueckers is a this, or this person's a lesbian, or this person's really a man, or this person has an Adam's apple, and I'm probably pretty sure you know which player I'm talking about, and all of this stuff that comes into the ridicule and the judgment of it. But really, just watch the fucking game. If you like great basketball, I promise you, a lot of the stuff that UConn is doing basketball wise, I'm talking like straight up, just the plays and sets that they're running, is better than anything I've seen from Detroit Pistons this year. Guaranteed. Watching NC State was great. Watching South Carolina today was incredible. Like, I think there are some really, really talented women coaching. I think there's some brilliant stars coming up. And, if you're a father to a young girl, or if you are a woman, with young girls coming up, I think there's just going to be so many more role models. And, it's pretty cool. Like a lot of girls grew up idolizing Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant or whoever, like whatever it is, right? They grew up idolizing these male players, and that's great. That's great. And I hope that they'll continue to watch male players. However, it's pretty cool that, 15 years from now, someone's going to want to be like, someone's going to grow up literally having watched all of Breanna Stewart's games, or maybe all of Kelsey Plum's games, or all of Asia's games, or I don't know, all of Caitlin Clark's games, and they're going to want to be the next Caitlin Clark. They're not going to have to. They're going to have variety, and I think that the spotlight that is being put on the women's game is so great because most of it, like 95% of it, is favorable and positive. Anyways, let's bring on two callers who haven't been on for a long time, FA and Coach Mo. I'm gonna bring you both on at the same time if you don't mind. What's going on, guys?
Hey, what's going on? Good to talk to you again.
Good to talk to you, man. What's going on?
Yeah, great weekend of basketball. Interesting that I wasn't even watching the NBA games because the women and male basketball NCAA, I think it was really fun basketball weekend. And my focus right now is on the draft and not really on Raptors game anymore.
Yeah, me too. Coach Mo, how are you doing?
I'm great, man. Watching college ball. You talked about tomorrow's game. It's gonna dwarf any NBA game going on. Like, just
100%.
If you're not watching that game, you're not a fan of basketball. Like, if you watch
right.
the NBA game over that, you need help. Like, you're actually a misogynist. Like, you actually hate women. If that's what you're tuning into over that game, yeah, that you're that guy.
I love that we are here in 2024 and three men are in complete agreement on that statement, because it's not pandering. It's not pandering. Like you know what?
It's a better product.
Yeah.
It is a better product, and that's the funny thing. I remember Kelsey Plum when she was on Cold as Balls with Kevin Hart, and he talked about like wanting to support the women's game, right? And she said, "No, don't support me. Come watch me." And I love that statement. And it is that attitude that has pissed men off for a while, actually. But it is that very attitude right now, which was so deeply unpopular among a lot of the female, athletes who were saying like, "Hey, our game is great. Our game is great." And some guys are just like, "Show me you can dunk," right? This attitude is exactly what is drawing a lot of men to that game now, because it is that attitude. It is the attitude from, I promise you, if Caitlin Clark didn't talk as much shit as she does, like, she would be half as interesting to watch. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's doing exciting shit on the basketball court. Paige is so fantastic to watch, but she's also deeply passionate. These women are passionate, but they're like also like very aggressive and competitive. And it doesn't really matter whether you prefer watching men or women play basketball. At the end of the day, you just want to see great basketball. You want to see competitors. You want to see like actual competition. You want to see people diving on the floor. You want to see people like roughing people up. And, like to some extent, like it's like the women's game is bringing the 90s back in a lot of ways. So it's really cool.
But like, these are the dog days of the season for the NBA too. You know what I mean? There's nothing at stake on a game-to-game basis.
Bro, are you seeing these injury reports? It's like, bro, I like literally have to go on ESPN and read like 18 players. Like, at some point, I'm just like, who is playing for this team tonight? And what? I've seen so many upsets lately. I've seen so many teams that are fielding like half injured. Like, how am I supposed to even know what to expect from this Sixers team tonight?
Yeah, but like if you're a basketball fan, it's a great time to be alive because it's like you got the March Madness. Then when this is over, you get the playoffs. Then the WNBA draft is going to be crazy. You have the Olympics. It's like ball heads are we're in the sky right now. We're just
That is true.
Yeah,
it's a great time right now.
when you look at the NCAA, right, the competition is night and day from the NBA, and the officiating and the fouls calling and things like that, right? It honestly is a better product right now than the NBA.
Yeah,
It is. It is. And yeah, I'm surprised how often they get the right call. Even stuff that I'm seeing on TV, I'm like, that feels wrong. And then they show the replay and it just like grazes the guy's elbow. And I'm like, fucking hell, how did this referee see that? The NBA officially needs to poach the referees from the NCAA because clearly, like, they have. I understand also, like, it's worth noting the NCAA is slower. It's a slower game.
Yeah, but in the NBA too,
The athletes are slower too.
They pander to a lot of these superstars, right? The superstar calls where some teams get good calls. The Lakers have like the most free throws of anybody. They don't drive to the basket. So I don't know. It's like NBA is trying to get some teams in the playoff because of the market.
There's a lot at stake for the NBA to get this season right. And by right, I mean all the right teams facing off against each other, all the right stars in the right places. And I mean, again, like when it's a business, there is a lot on the line. Consider, for instance, tomorrow's LSU Iowa game, right? If that was the NBA, there's no chance in hell those two teams get they're not meeting in the Elite Eight. Like it's just never going to happen. They would be in the Final Four or they would be in the finals. It's just too much of a ratings draw to waste in the Elite Eight. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that feels like the final, and you're going to get it out of the way, and then everything after that is going to feel like a letdown, especially if Caitlin Clark loses. That's the big thing, because if Caitlin Clark loses, you might end up with a South Carolina LSU final. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't have the same ring to it. There's no Caitlin Clark. There's no Paige Bueckers. Just bigs. You know what I mean? Like it's not going to be the same thing. So you know, if this was the NBA, obviously everything would have been rigged to get Caitlin Clark into the finals.
You know,
but it's not the NBA.
If South Carolina plays LSU, right, the racial component of that is going to be crazy.
There is a huge racial component to this, and it's partially. And I mentioned it earlier. It's not really Caitlin Clark's fault.
I heard you. Yeah, you were 100% right.
But it's not really Caitlin Clark's fault either. Like I personally like. See, she represents something, and she doesn't realize probably, or maybe she does realize. She's a smart girl. She does realize it. That she represents a straight white woman in America, right? And in a sport which is not very straight and not very white, especially on the women's side, right? I mean, I think on last survey, like 35 to 38% of female basketball players, professional basketball players, identified as LGBTQ, and a lot of them are white. A lot of them are black. And add in the other component. Look at how much money she's making. She's out earning, like, even the old heads like Diana Taurasi, who've achieved massive success. You can feel the resentment in their voices when they talk about these younger athletes coming up, because there is this feeling of we set the groundwork for something that we are never going to reap the benefits of because it's going backwards. And Diana Taurasi even said it. She's like, it's going backwards. There are, like, Angel Reese will make, I think, 15 times more at LSU than she will in the WNBA, just from NIL deals. Like, she makes a ton of money on NIL. And I have no doubt that these new athletes are very capable of running their own brands on TikTok and Instagram or whatever, and they'll continue to rake in money. They're just more business savvy than the older athletes were. But that being said, it is interesting to know that a woman will come in with all this hype. Caitlin Clark is going to have like tons and the other component of this is the people who are like really, really championing Caitlin Clark are not basketball fans, in my opinion. They're not people who've ever watched women's hoops. From what I've gathered, I don't know what you've seen, but most of these people are there for her. If she was gone, they're gone. You'll see it in the ratings. The second she's out, they're gone.
Yeah.
So the question then becomes, what is it about her that got them interested in the sport interested in a sport that they've never watched before, other than what she represents? But is it just how she plays? Is it that exciting how she plays? I mean, yeah, it's pretty damn exciting how she plays.
Yeah, I mean, she's not the first white woman. There's like,
I thought Candace Parker was way more exciting to watch than Caitlin Clark personally.
Yeah. But there was Brianna Stewart. She was amazing, right?
She was, but she's also 6'4". So there's like that component of like a guard versus a big. But Brianna Stewart could pull from three, and she could do crazy shit, and she was winning, and she was like the Bill Russell in a weird way. She was blocking shots and shit. Like she was like Tim Duncan, Bill Russell. She was a big. Never going to be as exciting as a guard like Steph Curry or Michael Jordan or whatever. But I think like Candace Parker was like revolutionary. She was like a wing guard who could dunk and shoot and do crazy shit and pass the basketball. Why did she not revolutionize the game? You know, in this sense.
What about Diana Taurasi?
Diana Taurasi was like 2002, 2003. I was like, I mean, it's a while. Like the WNBA was like way too young back then, and women's
Candace
hoops
Parker was out today. If she was a collegiate athlete now, she'd be huge.
Well, therein lies the point. You had to have a Cheryl Miller to have a Lisa Leslie. You had to have a Lisa Leslie to have a Candace Parker. You had to have a Candace Parker to have an A'ja Wilson. And now, you know, but I mean, to some extent, a big is never going to be as popular as a guard. And, like Kelsey Plum was a bigger deal than Maya Moore and all these, guards, that people could identify with. But I don't think it's ever stretched quite to the degree of Caitlin Clark. And in fact, I know it's never stretched to that degree because the numbers that she pulled last year, she and LSU. But again, without LSU, it's not the same. LSU does not get enough credit for what they have done, which is they have created the villain.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
like the Magic Larry situation.
Exactly. Yeah. But the problem is they're not villains. They're not villains at all.
Yeah, but one side sees them as the villain, and the other side sees the other side as the villain. If you're from Boston's perspective, yeah, Magic and the Lakers are the villain. And if you're with Magic and the Lakers, Larry and the Celtics are the villains. Right. And that's what made it so good. That's why tomorrow's game is so big.
Well, what's interesting is like listening to Angel Reese, she seems very, very aware of this. Like she is keenly aware of it to the point where she literally is like egging it on. This is intelligence. In a nutshell, it's intelligence. The last thing that, and I think that's the coolest thing about this is because she's criticized so heavily, and LSU in general and Kim Mulkey and their entire crew is criticized so heavily for basically being too loud, too brash, talking so much shit, whatever. But they're not realizing that actually the fact that they do that is why people are watching. It's 100% why people are watching, because everybody saw her do this to Caitlin Clark. And then that in itself, if you weren't watching the game, it literally got you invested into who the fuck are these people and why is everyone talking about them? Why are they leading ESPN? Because there is some component of just putting something on front page. You just make it blow up that way. And if you check it out and it's like, oh shit, like, oh dude, these girls have beef. Like there's like actual beef here, and they're talking shit. And then there's the second component of it, which is fucking, Jill Biden, and then suddenly, they're doing podcasts about like the racial component of everything. Well, now it's like, and then you add to the backdrop of this very racially divided country. And then, LSU, Iowa becomes like the avatar for everything that is right and wrong with the United States of America.
Yeah. It's great.
It's interesting.
It's great TV.
Yeah. But personally, I'm rooting for neither one of them. I really want UConn to win. I don't know who you guys are rooting for. And honestly, like one thing, who are you rooting for? And then the second thing is, if you've been watching the men's side, are there any players that are sticking out to you for Raptors?
No.
I'll start with FA, actually.
Start with me. Stephen Castle from UConn. I think the game is already very slow for him, and it's very, very matured. He plays he plays really good defense. The 3 point, I know he shoots like 29% from three. He has good mechanics. I think that will come, and I think they're a good fit with Scotty Barnes because he's very, very unselfish. You can play basketball the right way.
Okay. Jason Williams saying Necht from Tennessee. He was interesting too. He's put up a crazy.
Pendance is really good driver. Him and Grady. I would like to have one of them at the game at the same time for defensive purposes.
I think Grady's a much better defender than people are giving credit for.
I agree. But you can't have both of them on the game at the same time.
Why not?
Kenneth is not a good defender.
So interesting. Salon.
Say for example, the Raptors get the number one pick. Who are you drafting? I think I'll trade down a little bit. I don't
So
want to.
it's crazy. Did you see my NBA 2K rebuild?
No.
Yeah, you did because you messaged me and you said RJ Barrett's gone.
Oh yeah. I saw that. Yeah. Okay, that's what you were referring to.
Yeah, so to those of you who remember, I got NBA 2K24 and PS5 for Christmas, and I said that until I renovate this house and fix all the shit that I need to fix, I'm not opening it. So I showed great amount of faith in myself and discipline watching that fucking thing wrapped up, knowing exactly what was in there every day, knowing I wanted to play it. And yeah, I finally finished yesterday, so I finally opened it up and I played my NBA, my GM, whatever. And I played out one season, and then I got to the off season and I was like, okay, there are some decisions to be made here. And I signed OG Anunoby, and I really wanted to sign Malik Monk as well. And in order to sign Malik Monk, I had to get rid of Jakob Poeltl and RJ Barrett in order to free up the cap space to do that. Re-signed Emmanuel quickly, got an extra draft pick in that process from Bruce Brown, lucked out in the draft. And I drafted Alex Sarr 6th. The Pacers missed the playoffs in this simulation, so I had the 14th pick, and somehow Reed Shepherd was there, so I got the 14th pick there. And then I traded something like a future pick and something.
And Brown.
We need a big. Where's the big? Where's our center?
Oh, I signed Christian Coloco back. God, let me see what the roster was. Hang on, where was it?
But why you're doing that? If you have the number one pick, are you gonna pick Alexander Sarr?
No, I would not. I picked him 6th.
I'm not very big on him like everybody is. I'd rather get a big with a 16th or the 31, 32 pick, 17 or 30. I'd like to go with a guard or a small forward with the first. If we keep the first, the top 6 pick.
Yeah, I'm not really sure who the number 1 pick is, and I'm not like I think it'll come down to interviews. Okay, so my roster was Quickly, Barnes, Reed Shepherd, Miles Turner was my center. So I ended up getting a center. Miles Turner, Grady Dick, OG Anunoby, Malik Monk, Alex Sarr, Peyton Watson, Christian Coloco, and Zachary Risachet. So Risachet in this draft simulation slipped all the way to 8, and that's when I traded away future picks and young players to get him.
Apart from shooting, he can't put the ball on the ground, right? So
who?
Risachet can't really put the ball on the ground.
So here's the thing. What I really appreciate about Darko system, so everyone talking about Delano Banton's blowing up in Portland, right? And he's doing really well. And people are talking about how great OG Anunoby's doing. And people are talking about how great Pascal Siakam's doing. And people are talking about how great Grady's doing now. Guess what? All these guys started the season out with Darko Rajakovic. Okay? This guy is possibly...
Except Delano Banton, right? Except Delano Banton.
Delano Banton also started out the season with Darko
You mean from the G League?
Bro, he was with him for like a month and a half. So I mean, like, if he showed him some shit, like they were for sure working together, right?
And it was with them at the G League too. So
that too.
At the summer league.
Right. So that's what I'm trying to say. It's like, you got these guys who are all growing in different ways. Fine. But I'm seeing like very similar overlaps in all their games where they're better finishers, better decision makers, better passers. They're just better at reading the game. And I'm just like, how is it that all of them got better at all the same shit? Even Pascal, watching Pascal right now, he's better. He's a better player than the player I saw, to start the season for the Raptors. Everyone got better. Scotty got better. Grady got better. So I'm just like,
but you're right. Darko is a teacher of the game, right? When they make mistake, call them. Like he's really really helping the players. If you have like 5 tackles and maybe for the summer, you'll be really good when you get back.
Well, the thing is, like, he's been an assistant for so long, and people don't realize like how many times an assistant has an idea that is somehow shot down by the head coach. So now you're left to him. He gets to make decisions, and sometimes that's terrible when the guy who's making decisions is bad at making decisions. But I've kind of just learned to read him a lot, and to not only have I, of course, read his work and listened to him a lot over the summer, but just to get a good read of him on the court, like when I'm watching him in person, just to get a good read of him in press conferences. And I think that he has this remarkable judgment, which is to say that I think he really understands how to think. It's the greatest gift that anyone could have, which is the ability to think well. People don't realize that because most people spend most of their time drowning themselves in like, not inappropriate thoughts, but like drowning themselves in stimulation. So they never give themselves a moment to think. But I think he has a very interesting mind in terms of how he processes information. And it's not necessarily intelligence, it's just he's crossed the right wires. And so he has this excellent way of communicating and building trust with players. And, you look at like, it's been interesting to watch so much NCAA basketball because you're getting to know a lot of coaches on the women's side, men's side, whatever. Dawn Steely is a great example of like a coach where I'm like, I would love to play for that coach. She seems like the right coach to play for. You know what I mean? She has a Darko effect, or Darko has a Dawn effect. I don't know which way you want to put it. Where you can connect people on shared values without having to bribe them, like Nick Nurse did. And Darko has clearly connected people on the fair value of joy for the game, love of the game, development, getting better, pursuing meaning, and, playing for each other. And the team is taking on that identity because he is the strongest voice in the room right now. And that's good. So when I was playing the 2K game, what's interesting is I download all the draft classes, but then I have to make them realistic because most draft classes that you download are hyper unrealistic. Like everyone has potential 94 or 92 or whatever. I'm like, fuck this shit. So I started drawing out the potential, and I really like how NBA 2K24 has done this, where they give you max potential, minimum potential, and then it gives you boom potential, bust potential, and average potential, which is great. I think it's like perfect to line up like, what is the likelihood that this player will actually succeed? And I think this is actually very close to how real potential actually works. Because yes, there is a world in which everything in the world lined up and Bruno Caboclo became like a star. Right?
Mm-hmm.
He had the arms, he had the length, he has a lot of things, but it was like a 1% chance that he could, and like a 90% chance he wasn't going to become anything. So right now, I think you have a development staff in place where if there's even a 4% or 3% chance with a prospect, they'll probably get it. They'll probably get it out of them. And that's what makes me so excited about this, because there is going to be 4 young players at minimum. I don't want to say at minimum. There are 3 young players at minimum who are going to enter the Raptors system this summer. Maybe 4. And I say 4 because you'll have probably, hopefully, no, I'll say probably, hopefully the Raptors 6th overall pick or higher. You'll have the Indiana pick, you'll have the Detroit 2nd rounder, and you'll have probably at least one player in the undrafted heap. they always pick up one guy, right? That's 4 players that come into Summer League. That's 4 players that Darko's going to work with. That's 4 players that are coming to this completely new culture where like everyone is selfless and everyone's like solid. And you got Kelly Olynyk and Jakob Poeltl teaching you how to be a pro, and hopefully you have Garrett Temple back, and you have Scotty Barnes and Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett telling you how to run the ropes. The people who think this team is going to be bad next year are fucking high. I promise you this team is not going to be bad next year.
They're going to be really, really good. Really, really good.
Well, I don't know about really, really good, but they'll be way better than people are expecting them to be. Because
you saw what happened before Scotty got hurt, right? The way the bench was playing and Scotty on the bench with Olynyk, the ball was moving. It was a beauty to watch.
Yeah, and I mean, so often this year it's just come down to like injuries or adjustment, like adjusting, and it's like the team finally catches a bit of a groove, and then boom, someone gets traded. And I was listening to somebody that I thought was really smart, earlier, saying that, hey, this team with Siakam and OG and Scotty and Dennis Schroeder and Jakob, like that's way more talented than what the Raptors are going to be next year. And I'm just like, the gap between what I expect Emmanuel Quickley to be and what Dennis Schroeder was alone makes that impossible.
I know.
RJ Barrett, like as a talent, just talent, not impact, but talent, is a better player than OG Anunoby.
And the development of Grady Dick.
And Grady's development and the addition of Kelly Olynyk. And I mean, like, this is not nothing. This is not nothing at all. And I mean, if Jonte does beat the allegations, if that happens, if Christian Koloko comes back, these are all variables. But man, the cap space that they have, the development system that they have, man.
With the cap space, who are you going for? Are you going to bring Gary Trent Jr. back? For me, heck no.
You do what you got to do, and then you see what's left for Gary. And if he's gone,
not a starter. He's not a starter in the NBA.
He's not a priority. He's not a priority. He's not a priority.
I don't want him back, to be honest with you. I don't like him playing with Brady Dick at the same time.
If he's still around when you taking care of what you needed to take care of, then you talk to him.
Then how much are you paying him?
I would pay him 12 to 14. That's kind of like my cap, or where I would go with him.
And 2 years, right? Or 3 years with third-year team option.
Yeah, there's no player options anymore. Like I would nix that in the butt. Like I would do 2 years and just live with it. I think he's.
And I honestly don't want him back. It doesn't impact the game. Like today, it gives you 30 points, tomorrow 12 points, but there's no impact in the game. Like just shoot. I don't like. Let's find somebody else, please.
Yo, can we talk about we've lost 13 games in a row, right?
Yep.
I believe post All-Star break, the plan wasn't to tank. The plan was to play, develop, win at the same time with the core of IQ, RJ, Scotty, Jakob, right? Mm-hmm. And Grady showing signs. But things happened. Scotty got hurt, Yak got hurt. RJ was nagging injuries. RJ's brother died. It is what it is. The universe told us tank, so we took it. If we have to give this pick to the Spurs, that's a gut punch. Bro, you're going to lose. You could very well be losing like 18 of your last 19 or something crazy to end, right? Just to give your pick away.
Coach Mo, I think you have to prepare your mind for losing the pick.
I know, but that Jakob Poeltl trade is going to look 54%.
54% right now.
If I'm the guy who traded, if I'm the guy who did the Jakob Poeltl trade, I'm counting my stars. We keep the pick.
Yeah, I don't really care. I mean, honestly, I'd prefer to keep the pick. I would prefer to keep the pick. Don't get me wrong.
What was the end of the year for? To give San Antonio a pick? I don't know. It doesn't sit well with me. I get it.
Here's my question. Would you feel better if we had 28 wins right now and we were the Brooklyn Nets? Would you feel any better?
No.
Okay, so you'd be giving up a 9th overall pick to the Spurs. You don't feel better, right? So giving up 6th or giving up 9th has nothing to do with anything. No, I flagged this very early. Look, the end of the day,
we're not giving up 6, right? It's going to be 7 to 9, right?
I didn't care about the pick because I was like, we're gonna compete for a play-in and we're gonna play the right way and we're gonna develop trying to win. Then what happened, and now we've been the worst team in the league.
Okay, so that's the point. You didn't shut down Scotty Barnes and compromise his development.
Yeah.
He had to be shut down because his hand got injured. So that's the thing, right? And it's the same thing with RJ. Like, I mean, okay, yeah, you could argue RJ and Emmanuel quickly are losing some valuable game reps together, but without Scotty out there, what are you implementing?
Nothing.
He's going to be everything for your offense next year. He's probably going to be like a 28% to 29% usage guy next year. Everything's going to run through him. So unless you're developing chemistry with those guys and developing Scotty and Grady and their function, whatever, and you're going to have play groups and, you know, you have practices to do this stuff. People always assume it's just all game. It's just because it's out of sight, out of mind. And it's like you assume that because it's what you see, that's what is. And it's like, okay, tell me how Grady got better then. Because all the games we saw, he sucked. And then suddenly, like a light switch turned on and he was great.
I'm confident. I'm confident in this coaching staff. I'm confident next year, Scotty, RJ, IQ, and Grady will take jumps. I'm confident in that. It's just, I don't know, man. It's just,
dude. This team has lost. Here's the crazy thing. This team's lost.
After those four, there's nothing on this team I care about. Like nothing.
Okay.
After those four players, there's nothing I care about.
Yeah, but you got to realize that we're 2 and 19 without Jakob, right? So we need a big man. So he has some value.
The thing about that trade, where it's like, if we give up the pick now, at least we're free. It's the next 3 years. So it's this year, next year, and the year after, top 6 protected. It's like we're in prison. So I understand getting out of jail this year. I get that.
Right.
I want to say
it's not just about getting out of jail this year. It's about like opening up the flexibility for like next year onward. Like number one, like what happens if you go into next year and you sustain a major injury? Like, I mean, touch wood. I hope it never happens. But you know, what if you sustain like a season-ending injury to one of your key rotation guys and you have to completely
like Memphis, right?
Yeah, something like that, or I don't know. You know, you get a major suspension for 25 games because of some stupid shit. I don't know, something like that can derail your season real quick. And then at that point, you know, you have Cooper Flag, you know, and potentially like 3 franchise level players at the top of next year's draft that are worth tanking for. It would be nice to have that luxury without having the same paranoia of, oh my God, we might have to give it up to San Antonio again. So you open up some flexibility, number one. Number two, there's also a way, way, way more higher value placed on next year's draft picks. So if you're bad, like let's just say you start out bad and you're looking for some help. Let's just say, hypothetically, let's play this out. So next year you start out 2-8. You're struggling and everyone's eyeing that draft pick, that 2025 draft pick that you have. Now, based on the Stepien rule, can you even trade the 2025 draft pick?
No,
you can't.
If we don't convey this one,
fuck, you can't even trade it. But no. If you convey this one, I don't think you can convey 2025 because you would be giving up back-to-back picks. The earliest one you can convey is 2026.
No, you can trade 25.
You can't trade back-to-back picks. That's what I'm trying to say. If you can convey it on draft night. I'm 90% sure about this. I'm not a CBA guy, but like I'm 90% sure about this. Like you can't convey back-to-back picks. So the earliest one you would be able to convey is 2026, if I'm correct. That being said,
I think you're right. You can do it on draft night.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's what the Lakers are waiting for, right? That's why they didn't trade it, because they can only trade one pick now. But if they wait to draft now, they can trade multiple picks.
Okay, but like my whole thing is, so you traded for Yak to help Fred and Pascal core. Fred walks for free. You get a poo-poo platter for Siakam because you held on to him forever. And it's like we could potentially, it's just ugly. It's just the optics are bad now.
Yeah, but the optics are bad, but the reality is great. Let me give you the reality. The reality is the Raptors have lost 13 in a row. And the vibes and the body language and the chemistry on this team is still vastly better than any point last season.
Exactly.
But
Right?
what's their room for error in their summer? There's no room for error. They gotta hit with the cap space. They gotta hit with the pick they're gonna get from Indiana or whatever they do with the picks. Like it's like you've been fucking around for 2 years. You gotta catch up. I mean, we saw games against Orlando and New Orleans and OKC. We see the talent deficit. We see it.
Mhm.
There's no more. You can't miss.
Yeah, but back to what you started from, right? You said we have the foundation of Scotty, Grady D, Quickly, RJ, right? They just need to put pieces around them. And with the cap space and with 2 or 3 picks, I think you can have good talent.
Depends
But
on what they
because
do with
this draft, right? They don't have superstar talent, but they have very, very, very good role players, seniors in colleges or freshmen or juniors and the rest.
Here's the thing. I think that this channel is called Pensari Basketball, which means thinking about basketball. And I feel like sometimes we don't live up to the billing of that because I don't think I'm doing enough to change the way people think about basketball. Let me try here. Do you know that there's this old saying that 1 minute spent planning saves you 10 minutes doing? There's this old adage that this is true. So this element of infrastructure is so lost on people because people are so bad at planning, especially today. People are so bad at setting things up properly, mapping things out properly, researching things properly. We are in the age of instant gratification, which means if I can't see it right now, it doesn't exist. And when I see it, I'll believe it. And so there is no forward vision. There's a lot of groupthink. There's a lot of, influence because of social media that our thoughts are being constantly contaminated by other people's ideas about things. And so the takes that we borrow from other people are not really our own. We haven't really spent time in silence thinking about them. I have spent a lot of time over the last 3-4 days in silence. This has been life-changing for me because usually I'm listening to a podcast or whatever. When I'm not watching games, I'm in silence. Silence is great because about 20 minutes or 22 minutes into silence, you hit like deep thoughts that unlock mystery boxes in your mind of things that like you never even thought you could think of. And you're like, holy shit. The Raptors have officially, within 9 months of hiring a new coaching staff, completely reset the culture of this team. The culture of this team determines not only the success of this team, it determines the problem-solving capabilities of this team. It determines the late-game composure of this team. It determines how this team responds to adversity, trades, rumors, free agency, contract negotiations. It will influence other players wanting to play on this team. It will influence young players coming to this team and what they absorb about what it means to be a professional basketball player. All of these things are lost, I feel, on the casual fan who just sees it as players being drafted, players being busts, players not being busts. If I put a $5 million seed in rotten soil, it will turn into nothing because nothing can grow in rotten soil, right? It always comes down to that. It always comes down to this setup. You have to set up properly. And people don't see that because here's the thing. We just assume guys fail in a vacuum. We just assume, Kwame Brown just fucking failed in Washington. We didn't think about what was there in Washington. What infrastructure was there for him? Was it a good environment for him to go into? We think about, Eddie Curry and who taught him how to be a pro? The Baby Bulls. Who taught him how to be a pro? Who was his vet? Who were the guys who were teaching him how to get rest and recovery between games? Who were the guys who were teaching him how to listen to or not listen to a coach? I think sometimes a terrible thing can motivate tremendous growth if you learn from it properly. I think last year and the year before were a terrible thing. And people often look at that and they continue to think of it as a terrible thing. But see, the terrible thing is only a terrible thing until you make something of it that's good. And I think the Raptors have taken the lessons of the previous 2 years and they bottled it up into something great. You know, we often think about things with the ending in mind when we tell it back. You know, we don't talk about Jordan's failures as much as we talk about the 6 championships. But in the moment when he was losing to the Pistons, all we talked about was the failures, and there was no championship in sight, and he was never going to win. And a scoring champion can never be an NBA champion. But now it's so obvious that he was always going to win 6 and always going to become the GOAT. And it wasn't obvious. I promise you, as someone who had a little bit more exposure to that time period in history than the average person who's probably watching this, I promise you it was not at all obvious. In fact, it was very highly criticized, and the Bulls were criticized. And a lot of people were like, you'll never win a championship with this guy. He's too selfish. The truth is, all those failures just are part of something. This failure, what's happening right now for the Toronto Raptors, it's what it is. You know, it's gonna come around, and by next year we're gonna look at this 17-game losing streak, 15-game losing streak, or whatever the hell it is gonna be, and we're gonna look at this and we're gonna say this is what builds character, because it hasn't defined this team. You know, losing is such a toxic thing for the team because you start to identify as a losing team. But I think this coaching staff and this management team has done such an excellent job of managing expectations and managing communication within this team that none of this losing is actually even like starting to bother these players too much. They understand what they're doing.
And even them losing, right? They're not even trying to lose. They're playing hard. They're fighting every game, right? It's not like you see some teams like Memphis, like sometimes they really, really want to tank, so to speak, right? Like you mentioned something during the draft that the worst situation for Bilal Coulibaly was being drafted by Wizards.
Agreed.
Look at how he's developing and things like that. That's why some of the greatest innovation comes in quiet minds sight when people are taking a shower. If you go to prisons, right, where people spend time in prisons, like they come out in really, really innovative. I was listening to this lady, Cardi B, this week on Instagram stream, and she was like, sometimes in the darkest hours, that's where you find the light. That when she was in prison from when she was 19 to 21 or 22, because she was with some folks, she was drunk, she stayed in the car, they went to rob, and she didn't come out. That's why they gave her the 3 years. But that's when she discovered her music, right? Somebody in jail told her you have talent, and now look at where she is. She's worth $90 or $100 million. So, something most casual Raptors fans don't understand, right? What Masai, forget about the failures. What they did this season, right, is literally one of the fastest rebuild. Like really one of the fastest rebuild. Look at Wizards. Look at Detroit, right? They've been rebuilding for how many years? We already have the key pieces for next season, and we have the cap space. I see a lot of people on Twitter saying, "Oh, the Pascal, we didn't get anything for Pascal, right?" Folks need to be patient. We don't know who the draft picks are going to be, and we don't know what the cap space we get is going to give back to us.
Well, here's the thing: 3 draft picks, 3 first-round draft picks is not nothing.
Yeah,
it's not a lot, but it's not nothing, right? And I mean, again, as you're saying, we really don't know what that top 3 protected 2026 pick is going to be, but it might turn into a lottery player. Who knows where Pascal Siakam is going to be at that point, earning $50 million, and who knows what Tyrese, with the way the NBA is going right now, I wouldn't be surprised if Tyrese Halliburton is not even on the Pacers at that point. You know what I mean? That's a far out draft pick that could turn into something. This is a calculated gamble, on a team. Yeah, I would have been so much happier just trading for Jarris Walker. So much happier. But they didn't want to give him up. And Pascal Siakam did us absolutely no favors. It's not like he was...
Exactly. And would you rather have the Fred VanVleet situation where Pascal goes into the offseason and works for free?
Well, exactly. That is number one, and honestly, here's a question for you. Would you rather let Pascal Siakam walk for free, or would you rather pay him a max contract?
Walk. He can walk.
That's exactly it.
So
you got 3.
Yeah, so you got 3 picks, right? Or let's say you got 2 picks and O'Shea Baji and whatever, and Olynyk because of the other trade that they did following Pascal's trade.
Exactly. And I mean, like, you can think about Kelly Olynyk and Ochai Agbaji as like, and Bruce Brown and Jordan Nwora as fillers, or maybe one of these guys or two of these guys catch on to long term. Kelly Olynyk is already signed long term. Ochai seems to be a part of their plans for next year. Jordan Nwora might be a part of their plans. Bruce Brown might net you something if he puts up a few more games like this. Maybe he'll still retain some value. I think nobody is assuming that he just forgot how to play basketball. Like he clearly, he has some cachet around the league. So what I'm saying is it's not nothing. And I think people really, really need to understand what was the actual market value for Pascal Siakam, especially when he himself made it next to impossible to trade him. It's not like we could have just traded him anywhere, right? It was a very specific, group of teams that he was willing to go to. And that group might have been as little as 2. So it's like, yeah, sure, love to send you to Sacramento for, Malik Monk and future draft picks or whatever, but you're not interested in going to Sacramento. And would love to send you to Atlanta for, DeJounte Murray and, Onyeka Okongwu or whatever the hell, Jalen Johnson, whatever the hell was being offered. They didn't want to go to Atlanta. So it's just like over and over, you're facing this obstacle of, trying to do the right thing. But also the other team is not fucking forking over real assets for a player that doesn't want to be there. Could be a head case, could be a distraction. It's not Kawhi Leonard. He's not Kawhi Leonard. He's not that level of talent. So no one is taking that risk. And, I understood, when this was heading for a divorce, that it was going to be messy. I think it was about as clean as it possibly could have been. Nothing really overly negative leaked out. Everything was kumbaya by the end. There were some feel-good moments. They tied up a very important chapter of Raptors history, like with a very neat bow, as far as I'm concerned. Siakam was a champion. He's an all-star. He's an all-NBA guy. You don't want a player like that in his prime being like a negative story on your franchise. Like that's important to realize. And I think a lot of fans, they play with Trade Machine and they say, well, I don't care about that. I want the extra draft pick. So just trade him to Charlotte. And it's just like, dude, no. Because again, it is the consequence. It is the bigger picture. It is understanding, that you're constantly informing everybody of who you are as an organization by how you deal with your players, by whether or not you cheap out when you're extending them. And yeah, some markets are able to withstand, multiple blunders like the Lakers and the Celtics and the Knicks. But most markets are not. Most markets are not able to withstand that. Most markets have a very, very thin margin of error when it comes to the treatment of players and the reputation around the league. And the Raptors under Masai Ujiri have done a great job. I read comments all the time on Masai Basketball talking about, Masai needs to be fired, Masai needs to be this, Masai needs to be that. And it's just like, dude, like you can talk about whatever you want. He was late, he misread situation, fine. I see a guy who is consistently batted above average. The longer you bat, the more likely you are to float below average. The fact that you can bat above average for, 14 years, basically, is how long he's been doing this. 13 years.
No one has beef, though. No one has beef. Me personally, I don't have beef with the Siakam trade or Fred walking. It is what it is. The only
I would have had bigger beef if they matched Fred's offer. I would have been I would have started a riot in Toronto if they'd matched Fred's offer.
Mark, they only really have one black mark. Is that the Jakob trade? That's the only one.
Yeah, but the Jakob trade, they thought they were going for the plane, right? And they were up 19 points against Chicago when everything fell apart. If we had gone for the plane, if we had won that game and maybe the 8th seed, anything would have happened. Miami was the 8th or 7th seed that went to the NBA Finals, so they thought it was open. So that was a risk he took. What I didn't like was like maybe you shouldn't have the top 6 protected, maybe go for top 10 protected. But it is what it is at this point in time. We can't.
But the top 6 protection was explicitly because they wanted to give up the pick.
Yeah.
I promise you it's because they wanted to give up the pick. Because if they had top 10 protected it, there was a very good chance that you keep the pick and then you have to give up the protection, then rides over into the next season in which you could give up a much more valuable draft pick. So the goal was to get rid of this pick in a weak draft. Now, obviously, now you're like, I think the problem is right now people assume drafts are static, like nothing ever changes in a draft. My opinion on this is because this draft is so international at the top, like almost guaranteed 4 of the top 5 players picked in this draft are going to be international players, French, Serbian, etc. Because the draft is so international, there's a very good chance that something has changed in terms of their thinking about this draft. And that's allowed. In fact, it's encouraged. You should change your mind about things when new information presents itself. And players between the ages of 15 and 20 have sometimes unprecedented growths. And as much as you want to think, like if right now, touch wood, something happens, like a major injury happens for Cooper Flagg and Cameron Boozer, there go your next 2 drafts. Or AJ Debonsa, like your next 2 drafts are not the same anymore. If one of those guys tears an ACL or an MCL, it's not the same anymore. If one of those guys completely forgets how to shoot, like Andres Biedrins or Ben Simmons tomorrow, and has like this really horrible showing, you're not talking about the same draft anymore. The value is constantly changing. The problem is because of anchoring bias, once the value is set in the mind of the observer, it doesn't change as easily. So once people assume, okay, 2024, weak draft, it's just like, you don't even understand what the fuck that means. You're parroting the point of weak draft, but you don't know like why it's weak.
I don't even think this draft is weak, right? It just doesn't have like superstar potentials like the Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, and what's the name of the other guy, Edgecombe, and the rest, and Dylan Harper.
Let me ask you a real question. Have you seen Cooper Flagg play?
I've seen his game, yeah.
Okay. How likely is it that one of the players, any one of the players picked in the top 5 of 2024 are better than Cooper Flagg? Long term. You think it's impossible? Give it a percentage. I'm giving you 5 basically Kinder eggs, like 5 opportunities, and you have Cooper Flagg on one side, any one of these 5 players on the other side. 5 years from now, do you think, what are the odds that one of those players will be better than Cooper Flagg?
It's very possible.
Exactly. And that's my point. It is fucking possible as hell.
Very possible. Yeah.
Cooper is such an interesting athlete. He's so much bigger and so much more athletic and so much like more coordinated than the players he's playing against. But like once you get to the NBA, a lot of your skill stuff is going to show up. He has excellent feel for the game. I'm not denying that Cooper is probably going to be like, if he was in this year's draft, he'd go number 1 hands down. Like he's 17 years old right now. He'd go number 1 right now. If they could pick him number 1, he'd be number 1. No questions asked. I know that.
But even next year, I won't pick the Cooper Flagg number 1. I think I'll go with Ace Bailey.
There you go. And that's the point. There's so many guys like Andrew Wiggins, RJ Barrett, actually, before his college year,
he was ranked number 1. Yeah.
It was unquestionable he would be number 1.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't even get anyone to think about anybody else at that pick.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of comes down to like, there was a legit year where people thought that Kwame Brown was going to be a better player than Pau Gasol. It was definitive, obvious. People were like, why? People were very upset when when the Memphis Grizzlies picked Pau Gasol over Eddie Curry. They were like, what are you talking about? What are you doing? This guy's going to be the next Shaquille O'Neal. Yeah, that turned out real well. Pau Gasol turned out to be a better player than Kwame Brown and Tyson Chandler and Eddie Curry combined.
Even in this draft, right, at one point, Isaiah Collier from USC, right, was ranked number 1.
Yes, he was. And then people saw him level up, and it's different. But the problem with the anchoring bias here is legit. Like people receive information about a particular player, and look, I'm dealing with this with Cade, like for the last 4 years now. I'm trying to tell people he's not as good as you think he is. Not as good as you. No. I'm like, but the numbers, but this number, that number, all the numbers are telling you the same fucking thing. But yeah, he was number 1 ranked player in high school. It's like, bro, you're talking about like a 15 to 20 game sample size, of which maybe 4 games were against serious competition. You have now seen 3 NBA seasons, 2 of which he's been healthy-ish. And it's like, still your mind has not changed? Are you kidding me right now? That's the problem. We're very bad
And
at
I
reading our
think,
minds.
and I think this that's how you started this conversation about Zach Edey, right? That he's dominating college right now, but is he going to do that against NBA players? Likely not.
But here's the thing: how were we introduced to Zach Edey? Was he a 5-star prospect? No. Was he a major recruit? No. Does he play for a blue blood program? No. How differently would we talk about Zach Edey if he was hyped the way Yao Ming was hyped coming up? He wasn't that level of prospect. He wasn't that level of player. He's made himself into this good a player. So the thing that we have to be careful of with Zach Edey is that we do not bake in the opposite bias, which is we assume that he's a scrub, but he's turned himself into more. Because I'll tell you that a player that I made this mistake with is Walker Kessler. He was also not a hugely ranked player. He was also a player who was expected to go in the second round. He goes, top 25. He goes to Utah, and he turns into one of the top 5 young centers in the NBA. And that's honestly excellent value for, frankly, a pick that we gave up for Thaddeus Young. So, and he was picked after that. So that will always be on my mind as, and there was not a player that I was hype on. Like, I watched him play and I fucking missed it. And so I'm very, very, I don't have like a strong affinity for centers who can't shoot. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of centers who don't shoot well, which is why I was pretty down on the Jakob Poeltl pick. But I have to admit, like, the ability to actually stop and block shots inside and really rotate and clog up the paint and get offensive rebounds is invaluable.
Quick question. Have you warmed up to Brandon Miller or Charlotte?
100% yes. I have.
He's nice.
He's been very, very impressive. I was very wrong, and I eat the L on that for sure.
And Scott Henderson has been a little bit disappointed.
He has been disappointing, but I'm not selling my stock on him.
I agree, because it's a point guard. It takes time.
It does take time.
Horrific though. The shooting splits are horrific.
The shooting was always a question mark. It's his athleticism, his feel for the game that has been more or less disappointing. But I think he'll carve his way out as like a two-way, a guy with better offense than he's shown, and hopefully the jump shot develops. But I'm not ready to like just call it. I do want to say thank you to Black Nubian. I know I wrote it in the comments, but this super chat right here, thank you so much for this. That's Colombian pesos, so thank you so much for that. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think there's a lot of talent in this draft. I think some of it is being overlooked because it's not North American talent. I think a lot of it is being overlooked because it's not talent that's been talked about for a very long time.
So, quick question: if you had to pick a big in this draft, who would be the first big for the Raptors at 17 or 16?
Define big, because I mean, you're talking centers and power forwards exclusively, or are you talking about big wings too?
Center.
Okay, let's take a look.
At least a big wing.
No, I think we need a backup center. Who would you pick?
I'm leaning towards Klingon. But his foot injury gives me cause for pause, and
I like the center from Indiana, Kelly Way.
Okay, here, let me just pull this up.
Regardless of where we pick, it does feel good to know that whoever we pick and how many players we get from this draft, they're not coming into this team to die.
This is exactly it.
2 years.
They're not.
Yeah.
And okay, so we have Alexander Sarr, who I am warming up to a little bit. I don't necessarily see Evan Mobley in him, but I like his potential as a roll big and a lob threat for Scotty. And I think like it's really it. I know you don't draft for fit this early in the draft, but if he falls to 6, like he is elite value at 6.
If it's falls to 6, you take him and run.
Beyond that, Donovan Klingon, who currently is mocked to the Raptors, I don't buy this Mark Eaton thing at all. Like, I think, some of the... I think his touch was also, like, much better than I realized, And again, foot injury...
If it's not Alexander Sarr, I'm not picking a big at 6. I'm not picking a center at 6.
Right. In terms of Salon, you know,
I think I'm not.
so I watched two games of his last week, and I walked away from that thinking I'm not really sure how I feel about the competition he's playing. We lost Coach Mo. I'm not really sure about the competition he's playing. But very interesting shooter. Love his form. Love the high release. Really talented. Like,
Will you pick him number 6? No. If he's 17, possibly.
honestly, I might look at him at number 6, man. I might. I think it's just gonna come down to, you know, what the Raptors see in him, right? And again, if you're looking at floor, ceiling, right? Like his ceiling is super high. I really like I like Cody Williams as well. So there's a lot of guys that I'm starting to warm up to in the draft, and I'm gonna just go through some of them. Donovan Clingan is interesting. I don't know if I go as high as 6 on him. I think that's a little too high, but like I don't know. If we somehow end up with a 12th or 13th pick and he slips for whatever reason, I think you take him and run. I think Bueckers is really interesting in terms of like a prototype that really fits with Scotty. You know,
Who's that?
Mattis Bueckers from the G League.
Yeah, I love him. I love his game.
Yeah, I think
and confidence.
yeah, he's really interesting. I like Nikola Topic. Obviously, I think he's got like excellent backup guard potential for the Raptors.
But does have a jump shot.
Right. Risache, I'm not sure I see
I'm not big on him.
I'm not either, and I'm not sure how he's number 1 on this draft board. But I expect him to fall a little bit. But if he ends up being the first overall pick, like good luck. You know, I think he's interesting. I like his lateral quickness and his overall athleticism profile. He reminds me of players that have failed, and maybe I'm just baking too much of that into it.
He just keeps Stephon Castle.
Yeah. Ron Holland has been really interesting as well this year. I think
I like Ron Holland.
yeah. Rob Dillingham, I think again, I have a thing against this type of player, and I always have players who don't read the game nearly as well, but maybe are like very score first type of guys. Maybe, you know, their stock, like both Kentucky guards, all the Kentucky players take a bit of a stock hit because Kentucky exited, you know, so early in the process, but they were a really young team, and I didn't think they were going to go very far anyway. Jack Armstrong picked them to literally win the whole thing.
I don't know if I'll take Rob Dillingham with having them quickly.
I think they can play together, actually. Defensively, that might be tough, though.
Yeah, defensively is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, he's small. Like he's 6'1", and I'm not really sure like how plus the wingspan is. I haven't seen any of this guy from Cameroon, the Baylor guy.
I don't want him. I don't like him.
What do you not like?
I don't think he has this feel for the game. He doesn't have a jump shot. He played soccer growing up, so maybe that's what. If anybody, maybe I don't like his game.
So I would be very, very, very. I'm literally gonna.
The 20s, I'll take him.
I'm devoting at least 2 days to look at his film because I have a feeling the combination of him being from Cameroon, number 1, number 2, fitting the fact that he played soccer, and you know, again, if the Raptors have a type, they have a type, and this is their type. You know, long wings, long wing bigs. You know, with solid mobility, and I mean, if they, again, he's young, bro. Like you take him at this age, he is further along than Christian Koloko was, and he is further along than Pascal Siakam was. I'll tell you that much right now. He is much further along than those two guys were. So I have only watched highlights of him, but if you buy his work ethic, if you buy his desire and love for the game, you draft him 100% because athletically, he's very interesting. In terms of anybody else that really sticks out, yeah, Zach Edey, you know, how did you feel about Kyle Filipowski? His analytics are crazy, right now. Like, I mean, in terms of just like
I
win
don't like
shares, boxes
that.
minus, everything, really good. But every time I watch him play,
Yeah.
I see a bust. And again, I'm not sure if that's because I've seen so many players who are North American white players like him, you know, who have questionable athleticism fail.
If it falls to 16, maybe, but I'm not a big fan.
Well, his shot blocking numbers literally doubled per 100 possessions. He's averaging like 3 blocks per game this year, up from 1.5. So that's good. I don't necessarily like his disposition on the court. Number one, like the last 3 games I've watched of his, I just can't help but feel like maybe I'm reading into something that isn't there, but I just felt like I didn't really like how he commanded the game. And it kind of didn't work well for him because he was always opposite a player who did command the game so well, like today with DJ, right? Just the composure,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the presence, the stage presence, you know what I mean? You want, especially for an older player, right? Like he's not a freshman, right? So Filipowski is like a sophomore at this point. He's had that 1 year experience. He was probably supposed to come out last year, but he didn't come out, decided to go back.
I'm hoping this guy falls to the second round, if possible. Jared McCain from Duke.
Yes.
That would be a great Gary Trent replacement.
He's interesting, but he's 6'3", dude. I don't know about being Gary Trent replacement because once measurements come out on him, I'm pretty sure he's going to measure smaller than 6'3".
But he can shoot the ball.
He can, and I was actually very impressed with him pretty much throughout the entire process. And in terms of like second round, John Hamilton saying Filipowski is soft. Yeah, it's definitely something he's going to have to overcome. But again, he wouldn't be the first player who's kind of come out in the NBA with that tag and had to overcome it. And in the second round, you have Melvin Agensa, very interesting prospect. You got Bobby Klintman. I think these are this is going to be a very, very interesting.
Bobby is not okay. Bobby Klintman is from Australia, right?
I think he's from.
It's from Sweden. It's from Sweden, but he plays in Australia.
Right.
He went from
He's playing in the NBA.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What of this guy, Jonathan Mobo?
Who?
Jonathan Mobo from UCSF.
Haven't seen him play.
He's a 6'8" big man. Scotty Barnes on Twitch yesterday was like, I'm willing him to the Toronto Raptors, like speaking it into existence.
Who the hell is this?
Jonathan Mobo is 6'8" big man from UCSF.
UCSF.
I think he's gonna go undrafted. It'll be a good two-way for Toronto. He was with Scotty Barnes yesterday on Twitch.
He was with Scotty?
Yeah, and Scotty was like, I'm speaking it into existence that he's gonna be a Raptors.
Like I'm looking.
University of San Francisco. He averaged 14.2 points, 10 rebounds, 3.6 assists. He's another
Jonathan
Mobo, Mogbo.
Oh, him. Okay, God, yes, I know him. He's friends with Scotty. They've been friends for a while.
Oh, really? Okay, they were together yesterday on Twitch.
Oh, yes. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, he's all right. I couldn't understand the pronunciation of who you kept saying. I was like, okay, that him. Yes. Yeah. They've been friends for a while. I look at DJ Wagner in the undrafted heap. Again, big fan of his dad's. If I'm going for a gunner for the G League on a 2-way contract, he's definitely where I'm going. Could be very interesting.
What of this guy that has some Terrence Shannon Jr., the one that has some issues right now? I don't think Toronto is gonna touch him though.
Yeah, man. I'm looking at this draft, and even like up to like 52, 45, according to the mocks at least, I'm seeing players with like actual NBA chops. Like NBA athleticism, NBA shot, NBA rebounding. At some point, obviously, the league is going to get much more talented, and guys who have NBA talent are going to be bumped out of it. But that being said, I think there is a considerable amount of talent that will be available at the 3 picks that the Raptors are expected to have. And there's an outside chance that somebody drops into the undrafted heap that is considerably better than Marquise Noel and Justin Champagnie. So,
I think
overall,
there's a possibility that I would trade the second round pick for maybe 2 other second round picks. Maybe trade down.
There's only so many players. Unless, of course, you love 2 players. I think that 31st, 32nd pick is so valuable, man. So valuable. You know why? Because there are certain guys, it's stigma, right? Mentally, you just can't get over the hurdle of them being not first round talent. So a lot of those guys end up in second round, and typically they're upperclassmen or foreign players,
or seniors,
or people with injury histories, or seniors or something, and they're just way better. But for some reason, they weren't a good idea at 27, but they're a great idea at 31. It's the weirdest thing. So I always look at picks 30 to 35 as a gold mine of talent. And that's where Andrew Nembhard went. That's where Christian Koloko went. That's kind of roughly where
Desmond Bane's almost close.
Well, Desmond Bane was close. It was 29. So yeah, that range of the draft, weirdly enough, is where people take the sure things. And I don't know why.
No,
the sure things don't go in the 15 to 25 range.
I think because their contract is not guaranteed to, right? Some teams don't want to have it. They don't want to have the first round pick in their cap space, so they just wait for them to pick early second round. That's what I'm thinking. If possible, if you can, you just trade down to 36 and 40, get 2 picks. That's what Denver Nuggets did last year. They kept trading them.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, what I do in 2K is I take the 12th pick and then I dangle it. And usually some team is willing to offer me 15 plus a future first. And then I get the 15th pick. And then I dangle that. And I trade it for 18 and a future first.
That's how this guy fell last year, right? Gigi Jackson to Memphis.
Yeah. I don't know. I think this team lacks top shelf talent. I would like to see players like Jalen McDaniels and Chris Boucher, Mohamedou Gay, guys like this replaced with top shelf, youth prospects. And I just think that, you have 15, so you have 18 roster spots now, 17 roster spots, 17 roster spots. 18. 3 two-way spots.
Yeah, and 15.
So you have 18 roster spots now. You can't be wasting any more on Marquise Noel. You just can't. No shade. He's 5'6". He's a defensive liability. He's 24 years old. We need a better class of two-way player. We just do.
I agree.
Our two-way players have to, be more of the DeJounte Porter type, in terms of talent.
Yeah,
and I just think that, and that upscaling will happen with draft picks, and especially more success in the second round. And I just think that the Raptors, because they've known for a while where they would be drafting, in years past, even last year, did the Raptors know that they'd be drafting 13th? No. They didn't know they'd be drafting 13th.
And the good thing with this draft, right? The second round is going to be on a different day. So I hope we get the 31st pick. So it's you're picking number 1, and there's going to likely be a lot of trade around that period after the first day, right? Because right now, after the first round pick, the second round pick is bam, 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 bam. But this draft, you have in the night to simmer and just think over it, and teams to start calling for the pick. And maybe you can package the pick with another player and something.
Mm-hmm. I agree. That would be cool.
What do you think of Baba Miller? He's going back to college, right? I know you like him.
I did like him a lot, and I still do in terms of athletic potential and playmaking potential. In fact, I like him for a lot of the same reasons I like DeJounte Porter. The problem is his jump shot hasn't fallen. It's a big problem.
What about Bob Carrington, the guy from is it Pittsburgh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he said he's actually going back to college.
That could be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Also, this 2 days thing is really interesting because you do have one of the top 2 picks
Exactly.
on that second day, which
Mm-hmm.
means that like there is some team out there that could get really desperate.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like to the point where they might be willing to toss you a future first round pick in order to get into the second round.
I agree.
And yeah, I think if the Raptors knew about this beforehand, genius move to get to the top of the second round. And again, it could also work out against you, right? Like to the point where all the talent is gone and some players that were expected to drop actually go earlier, and some players that people are really bearish on due to injuries, physicals, failing, going back. Again, right now we're looking at the draft and we're assuming that all these people are...
I think it's more to our advantage because you have the whole night to do all the analytics and do all the, like if a player drops, right, then you have the whole night to do all the investigation and things like that, right? So
well, from my angle, it's double the content. Success, double the content, double the super chats, double everything. Great. You know? And plus we can just be like, and with the second overall pick today, the Raptors select.
No, the first. We still have the first. We're hoping that Wizard wins a few more games.
The Wizards have been winning games lately.
No, but they lost to Detroit, so they've won 14. Detroit has won 13. So knock on wood. We just need to lose. We just need to lose that game to Wizard. But if we lose the game to Wizard, we're likely going to lose out because that's the other game, and the game against Brooklyn that we're likely going to win.
This is like our Super Bowl.
Yeah.
What's crazy is the Toronto Raptors are right now the coldest team in the NBA, by far the coldest team in the NBA. Here's a look at Tankathon, as is our a nightly tradition before we wrap up. We didn't do the post game today because it's probably so irrelevant, but yeah, we'll definitely look at that right as we end. But yeah, this is where we're at. Lost 13 straight. We are trying to outduel the Portland Trailblazers, who've lost 9 straight. We're never going to catch Portland. We're never going to catch Charlotte. We're never catching San Antonio.
We're not catching. If San Antonio won the game today, then there would have been hope. But we're not going to catch them. It's done. They have like 7 games left. They're not going to win 5.
Correct. And we are not going to lose every game from here on out. We're definitely going to win at least one more game throughout the season.
I think we'll win the Wizards game or the Brooklyn game. Well, I'm praying that Memphis wins one at least.
Dude, if RJ and Emmanuel quickly come back, don't be surprised if we win multiple games. Thankfully, I also expect Memphis to win multiple games.
No, they're not. I think they're shutting down. They're likely shutting down Desmond Bain with sub back and things like that. So
they're still going to be playing teams like Detroit and Washington and whatever. Like, you think they're going to lose to those teams with Jaren Jackson?
They're not playing Washington anymore. I think they're playing Detroit twice.
Hold on, let me just see strength of schedule.
I think, don't quote me on that, but I'm 80% sure.
Strength of schedule, NBA. Okay, so Toronto has the 11th hardest schedule. Great. That's good. Washington has the 9th hardest schedule.
That's why Detroit is going to pass.
Detroit has the easiest schedule.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Memphis.
Where's Memphis? Would be 26th easiest schedule. They have 2 games left against the Pistons and 1 game left against the Spurs.
Yeah.
It's so sad to see the Raptors logo and all the easiest opponents. Seeing it. There's like Milwaukee, 1 game left against the Raptors. Is there a team that has 2 games left against the Raptors? Miami has 2 games left against the Raptors.
The last 2 games of the season. And
right.
we're likely losing those 2 games because Miami's going to be trying to get the 6th seed.
Possibly. The Raptors have a game against Minnesota, a game against the Lakers, a game against the Pacers, 2 games against the. I mean, look, the odds are, if we just play this straight, even if RJ Barrett comes back, as long as we don't bring RJ and Emmanuel quickly back, like I think if you bring them both back, you might be in trouble. But also, please understand, just because you bring a more talented player back doesn't mean they immediately mesh well. Like, how many games has RJ played with Kelly Olynyk? You know what I mean? And then you add into it that, RJ is not a great defender. So he would be taking the place of somebody who's probably a better defender than him, maybe.
I think the 2 games that we're likely going to win or have a chance is against Wizards and Brooklyn Nets. Because we matched against Brooklyn Nets, right? But
I keep thinking that one of those Miami games, if the seats are locked up, they're going to run out like G Leaguers against us. But yeah, I don't know.
It depends on the last 2 games, right? I agree.
Yeah.
But if it gets to the last 2 games, then and you have a chance to get 46% or 29%, you just go for the full tank, man. Just tell the coach like, what the heck? There's a difference between 46% and 29% chance of keeping your pick.
No, I agree. Sorry, I'm getting some weird interference on the mic. Sorry. What is going on here? I need a shorter XLR cable. Okay. Okay. FA, thanks a lot for calling in, man. I appreciate it.
Good catching up, yeah.
Yeah, man. All right. Take care.
Take care, man.
Peace. Bye. Okay. We are going to move towards the post game, Darko post game. Give me 1 second to download this. Very curious to see what they had to say. And yeah, I think we said a lot today's live. I appreciate you guys for still being here, which is pretty cool. I'm noticing, of course, I've been noticing like a ton of, people saying like, hey, maybe you need to focus on other stuff. Like, the Raptors are doing this, Raptors are doing that. A lot of Raptors content is dead right now, etc. Well, we got 182 people on a live right now. Also, one of my favorite YouTubers, I asked him a question and I really, really wanted to get his answer on it. I'm going to email myself the clip while this is happening, and I'm going to play it for you guys after. It's a great deal of dedication.
Improvement to that tonight from your guys, at least a little bit?
I think so. Especially when second unit towards the end of the first quarter, start of the second quarter, I thought that stretch was really good, and I thought that was a change of the momentum of the game, that we were able to get some energy there and then get some, our offense going. We scored a bunch of points there in transition, in a fast break, and I thought that was a good moment for us, that we started playing a little bit harder and with better focus.
You saw Jordan have a very good offensive night, but are you seeing any kind of improvement to effort and attention to detail on defensive end?
Yes, I think that he's doing a better job on one-on-one defense when he's like in ISO situations. I think that he's doing a good job of holding his ground and guarding better one-on-one. Next layer to that is going to be inside the team defense, knowing positioning and doing better job there with boxing out, rebound, that kind of stuff.
11 assists for Kelly. I think he's got 38 over the last 4 games. For a big, what makes him so uniquely gifted as a passer?
I think that's the right word. He's very, very gifted. He's one of those players that just have an amazing feel for the game, that he's patient. I think he's doing a better job, especially lately, of taking care of the ball as well. I know he had 5 turnovers tonight, but he's much more intentional about it, how to protect the ball, how to find his teammates, and for his teammates to play off of him. I think he's developing pretty good chemistry with them.
To follow on that, when everyone's healthy, obviously Barnes and Quickly are sort of your playmakers. How much does it change things in terms of your scheme to have a center be sort of your main playmaker?
It does not hurt you for sure. It really helps. I'm excited to see our full team back and to see Bruce and to see Kelly in his natural role coming off the bench and being really connector for us.
You just touched on waiting to get all your guys together. Right? How has it been frustrating not have a chance to even think about what those 4 guys would help with the 5 guys in the team that might play in the NBA game?
I mean, it's tough, but that's the reality where we at, and we gotta just adjust and roll with it. Try to get the best out of it, and as you guys can see, Kelly's now really making that progress with the connection with his teammates. Grady is making huge strides, playing huge minutes. Javon is doing good job out there. All of the guys are really like trying to grow inside their role.
Talk a little bit about that dunk from the pass from Bruce, and did you see your teammates' reaction? Because I don't know if you know, but Scotty fainted.
I haven't seen the reaction yet, but I'm sure it was great if you're talking Scotty did something. But just Bruce just passed it to me in the middle of the floor. I was open and just made a play from there. I was able to get the right steps, go up, and just make a play.
Obviously, this has been a tough stretch of the season. How important is it, though, to have plays like that gets a big reaction from the bench and maybe it helps keep the mood up?
It's definitely big for us, right now being a little bit of tough stretch, guys being hurt. It's good. It's a good momentum play. So, yeah.
What do you think the feedback from your dad's going to be after a game like this?
He'll probably tell me to rebound more. He might be a little more uplifting today, but my dad's really tough on me, so I'm sure he's going to have some great constructive criticism coming my way when I leave this tunnel and go say what's up to him out there.
19 points off the bench is a pretty serious contribution. What was working for you as a reserve player today?
I was just able to, get into a little bit of a rhythm. I haven't had that the past couple of games, and I'm just still trying to find my way, on this team. It's different lineups every night, and we're all, like I said, growing together. It's not always just going to be straight up. It's going to be ups and downs. Just trying to find it, and I'm sure I will. We got a great group of guys, a great coaching staff, and hopefully, not only myself but a couple of the other guys, can keep up their good play.
Okay, I have a treat for you guys. So, people who know this community know that I've had some very, very strong words about Cade, and it's gotten me kind of ostracized from a lot of communities and people who just don't agree with me. So this is probably one of my favorite YouTubers, and I asked him this question. I asked him a question whether he would build around Cade Cunningham. He had the funniest answer. As a big shout out to Dorian Group. If you haven't checked out Dorian's channel, it's a huge channel on YouTube. Definitely go check it out.
Would you build a team around Cade? No.
That's literally the whole clip. Let's just do that again.
Would you build a team around Cade? No.
He literally offered like 15 sentences, 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs for every question that people asked. But for that question, he offered a one-word answer. No. Almost like the question was beneath him. Almost like I knew the answer to the question too. Obviously, I wouldn't either. But that's my point. So, again, I'm a little bit, I don't want to say peeved. I guess there's part of me that's a little bit like, at what point am I going to get the vindication to be, right about this? Because again, it's not easy to go against the grain on something and to be right. Now, once you're right for 2 to 3 straight years, you should get a little bit of credit for it, right? You should get some people coming your way and being like, hey, this thing that you were saying all along seems to be pretty accurate. But no dice on this Cade Cunningham thing. No, people keep bouncing the drum, and no matter how many times I see like an educated basketball fan, seemingly educated, they always talk about Cade like he's a star, or like a superstar or something, like that he'll just magically become one. And I'm not seeing it. So again, I'm willing to change my mind about people when they show me something different. I haven't seen anything different from Cade that would suggest that he is that. My final conversation of the night will be basically just this, which is how much do you value heliocentrism in terms of how you actually value a basketball player? So very often we discredit players for having help. We say Kobe had Shaq, Kobe had, Kobe had this person, Kobe had, Powell, Kobe had this person, like almost as if to say like, well, Magic had James Worthy and Magic had Kareem, but this guy, he didn't have anybody. I get it. I do get it. When you see what Caitlin Clark is doing, right? For Iowa, you look at the splits with her on the bench versus her on the court, it's insanity, right? And sometimes a player is just that much better than their teammates. They are just that much better. Like the gap between them and the second best player on their team is just enormous. And sometimes that gap exists, but you don't feel it as much. But sometimes when the player is very ball dominant, like a Luka Doncic or a Cade Cunningham in Ohio or Ohio State or, Caitlin Clark in Iowa, you do feel it. You feel it because they literally dominate every single possession. They're making every single decision for their team. And so often we don't actually realize that there's a trade-off for this, that if you are the system, to borrow a term from James Harden, you will cannibalize a lot of your teammates' numbers, which will inevitably make them look much worse than they really are. You'll take a lot of assist numbers, you'll get a lot of shots up, you'll probably take a high volume of, contested shots, which are being generated by your teammates setting screens, setting up offensive rebounds, etc. You're probably not going to be drawing some very hard defensive assignments. Your teammates are obviously going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting on that end to hold you up, basically. And so when we say a player had no help, we really do discredit the other players, but we also sort of, misunderstand fundamentally what it takes to win a basketball game. What it takes to win a basketball game is playing two ends, and we don't talk about defense and offense the same way. This is just a personal opinion, and it's an opinion that is shared by, a few friends that I have that are, close to this. Most coaches at the youth level, even at the college level, are quite stupid when it comes to basketball. If you're very good at defense and you're very good at screen setting and you're very, very good at rebounding and all that stuff, but you're not very good at shooting the basketball or scoring the basketball in general, which is to say that you're below league average or below college average finisher, below college average shooter, you don't shoot threes, they're not going to play you. They're just not going to play you because you make the offense so difficult to structure. And they're not really trained to see all the other stuff that you're doing. And they're not necessarily even trained or imagined enough to put you in the right place or in the right positions to succeed offensively. So even if a role did exist for you offensively, they wouldn't even know what to do with you if they could. So we do see teams like, the Dallas Mavericks with Luka Doncic, the Philadelphia 76ers with Allen Iverson, the Iowa team with Caitlin Clark. And you do see like these numbers that are eye-popping in terms of like on-off splits, or LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. And this notion of carrying bums, like this guy's a bum, that guy's a bum. Was Judas Ilgauskas really a bum? Was Larry Hughes really a bum? Were they bums before they got next to LeBron and you really felt the weight of how much they could have done? Like, look at Chris Bosh. Like, Chris Bosh became a better player for the Miami Heat, but were his numbers anywhere near what they were with the Toronto Raptors? You consider even what LSU is doing, right? They had a point guard transfer over for another program. Look at her numbers. Look at how much they've declined, right? So this notion of what might this player... So here's the question. What would Paige Bueckers do with Caitlin Clark's usage? What could she do with Caitlin Clark's usage? I'll tell you what she couldn't do. She couldn't be a worse defender than Caitlin Clark. So she's always going to be a better defender than Caitlin Clark. And in my opinion, she's a better passer. She's not a better shooter, but she is a better shooter in the sense that she's a better 3-point shooter in terms of percentages, but she's not a better 3-point shooter in terms of volume. So even if you do edge out that one thing, she's a better finisher, she's a better athlete, she's quicker, she's faster, she's a better defender, she's probably a better rebounder. I mean, what does she not do? So really what you're really penalizing her for doing is having better teammates that she shares the ball with. You're penalizing her for playing basketball in a way that is more traditionally acceptable and more conducive to winning. The way Caitlin Clark plays is not conducive to winning basketball games. It's just not. And therefore, if she does win, it will be against nature. It will be Herculean effort. Like, winning basketball is what South Carolina is playing. That's winning basketball. UConn and South Carolina play winning basketball, in my opinion, in terms of the women's game. You know, that's how you win basketball games. The Golden State Warriors, dynasty is how you win basketball games. Right? Heliocentrism rarely ever works. Rarely ever. You need such an engine at the top, and you need so much around that engine in terms of defensive identity and heavy lifting, and finishing and playmaking talent and secondary playmakers. But all of these things that we don't count on the box on the box score, they get discredited, and those players get called bums. Derek Fisher was not a bum. He's a very good player. Rick Fox, Robert Horry, these guys are not bums, right? Shaq and Kobe did not carry bums. They carried really good players who sacrificed their numbers so that these two guys can get the shots. And Aaron McKee and Jermaine Jones and, Tyronn Hill and Dikembe Mutombo and Eric Snow, like, these guys were not bums. Like, you can say they were bums, but they were very defensive-minded players. Would we look at Allen Iverson's finals trip differently if he had a Vince Carter on his team? Sure. The talent offensively would have, balanced it out. But was Vince Carter going to make a difference against the against the Los Angeles Lakers in the finals, or was Dikembe Mutombo going to be a better bet? Do you know what I mean? So in terms of offense and defense and how we weight it, we usually have like a really skewed way of looking at this stuff. And I think that when you take a guy like a Cade Cunningham who takes such a disproportionate load of his team's offense, you would expect that offense would crater without him. And the thing with Cade is that he's the worst of both worlds, which is, number one, he plays a brand of basketball which is very heliocentric. But number two, it's so inefficient, even in the good moments, it's so inefficient that his team is literally better with him off the court. And was for much of the season, but is now marginally better with him on the court. But historically, throughout his career in the NBA, his team has been better with him off the court. And you would expect that for someone who has his load, creation, usage, etc., that his team would be significantly better with him on the court, especially if we are to buy the narrative that his teammates are bums. See, hate is such a strong word, Jose Calderon. It's not hate. It's not hate. It's not hate. It's an obsession with understanding why people think this way and what this represents, right? Cade is not alone. There are other players that people swore were something that they weren't, for a very long time. I think Joe Smith is a great example of a guy who people thought for many, many years was going to be a franchise big, but he wasn't. Antonio McDyess is another example of a guy that people thought was going to be a franchise level big, but he wasn't. He was always injured or whatever. People just keep trying to extract something out of something that just isn't there, because, and it's a million different things that skew why people think that way. It's an aesthetic, it's a particular affinity, it's an anchoring bias, it's where the player played. I mean, people tried to really sell themselves on Andrew Wiggins being a superstar even 3 years into his career, 4 years into his career. People were still like that. Wait till Andrew Wiggins turns it around. Yes, that's early marketing. That's bias, but it's also big numbers in small vacuum. There's all the stories we tell ourselves about why this player is not being successful in this situation, but they might be successful if they got more help or whatever. But this notion of penalizing players for being better teammates is something that I just actively resent, because Paige Bueckers does not dominate the basketball. She doesn't. if I didn't tell you she was the best player in the country and you just watched UConn play yesterday for the first half, you would have thought she was just one of the players. I mean, clearly, if you have a trained eye for it, you could see her skill level was like crazy. But this is a girl who is stamped by Kobe, dude. Like, she is great, and she's great at basketball. But you can't watch 2 minutes of Iowa basketball and not know that Caitlin Clark's the best player in Iowa. You know, because they just keep giving her back the ball, and everything is set up for her to succeed and to score. And so my point is, what would other players do with that level of usage? What would Malik Monk do with Cade Cunningham's level of usage? What would, you know what I mean? Like, there are players that are like heaters. Like, what would a Keontae George do with Cade Cunningham's level of usage and his opportunity? You know what I mean? So you have to look at that. And it's very difficult when we compare players who are in completely different situations, completely different roles, with completely different rosters around them. Scotty Barnes has to guard the best player on the other team. So if I'm going to compare his shooting percentages to Cade Cunningham's situation, it's not the same. Scotty's not playing with Asar Thompson. Scotty's not playing with Jalen Duren. Scotty is often like, he is the Asar Thompson in this situation in terms of like defensive assignments and matchups. So having to play 4 or 5 positions and trying to play the right way with not super talented shooters around you anyway, because remember, Pascal Siakam shooting 16%, but then everyone says, oh, but he has all the help. That's what I resent. Terrence Popovich saying, is Atlanta better without Trey? They beat Boston twice. No, I think you need to look at who played for Boston and who didn't play for Boston. Obviously, Cade will put up points. He holds the ball all the time. He's lost if he's not touching the basketball. See, that's the thing. And Grim, this may not even be true. Because honestly, like, what Cade does requires skill, and that's some of that skill is stuff that Scotty does not have yet. And so it could be like really ugly if Scotty did it, but Scotty's not going to do it because that's not his game. But the point is, it's not Cade's either. I think at some point it just comes down to this, right? You can, everything the Raptors are setting up right now in terms of the offense, in terms of like, their back cuts and their split action and everything that they're doing, is just going to be way more effective when you have gravity, when you have a real star, when you have someone that the defense has to actually pay attention to, when you have someone who can score at a really efficient rate and really punish defenses, when you have someone who can force the defense into scramble and mismatches and exploit that and make quicker reads and better passes out of those double teams and see the floor a little bit better, push it a little bit better, defend a little bit better, generating more transition opportunities. I think so many times this year the Raptors have been on a roll. Not really been on a roll, but been playing good basketball, but it's been a close loss. Or maybe they played like a week where you're like, oh man, next week is going to be really solid. And then they make a trade or they have a injury. There's been a lot of stop, go. And I think a lot of it is by design for the Raptors. I think this is a team that has massively underperformed 2 years in a row, but this year it feels like the underperformance was by design. And that's a good thing, because last year it was definitely not by design. Last year they were trying to be good and they ended up bad. I think this year they're trying to be bad, but they ended up kind of good. And it's been a bit of a juggling act for Darko Rajakovic to find new and creative ways to lose every single game. But I will tell you this, in the NBA, you will always lose if you don't play defense. And the Raptors have basically just not played defense. Not effectively, not to win games. They're honing defensive tendencies and they're definitely like giving guys, like, I mean, Tobias Harris gets Grady Dick one-on-one. Okay. And there are some serious, shooting liabilities and shit on the floor. And the Raptors don't send any help. They don't send any help. They allow Tobias Harris to go one-on-one against Grady Dick. I mean, this is like a former all-star level type player. He's not an all-star, but like he's like a significantly talented player going up against a rookie. And, Grady's just having to like deal with it one-on-one, and they did this multiple times. And so it's like, if your actual interest is winning, when your interest becomes winning, which I'm assuming is next year, I mean, the switch will be easier to turn on than most people realize, I think, because they are building good habits. They're just doing everything very incomplete right now. To close, I think we fundamentally misunderstand basketball. And I think if you really want to see great basketball, watch UConn tomorrow. That's my closing thought on that. Really rooting for UConn to pull through. I am also pulling for LSU to pull through. I'm very, very impressed, however, by South Carolina. Like, I'm just impressed. Tony Chung saying next year's development year. I don't think so. I think they will develop, but I think they will win. I think the fact that Scotty and Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett, I think these guys are too good to tank. So we'll see what they do with cap space. We'll see what they do with draft picks. We'll see what they do with trades. But I'm confident to say that I like this team. And Abdul saying, who you got, Purdue or NC State? I don't know who I got because it feels oddly like giving advice on betting, but I will tell you that I'm rooting for NC State. Yeah. Peace, guys. Have a great one. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. And again, thanks to the 171 of you who are still here, to 200, 300, whatever of you that dropped through. Means a lot. Like, honestly, I'm telling you, these lives across Raptors Twitters or Raptor sphere have gone downhill, and I'm happy that we can talk about other stuff and still retain an audience. It's awesome. Yeah, very happy about that. Scotty won't be able to play defense and offense effectively the entire year without being gassed. Well, if you listen to Brian last time he was on, we talked about, I think that was like a week ago or a week and a half ago he was on, and we talked about, like Scotty needing to get into even better shape and doing stuff this offseason to get him into even better shape. So he's been doing some light on-court work even right now. Jakob's doing light on-court work right now, although his hand's still sprained and stuff. So we'll see, but I'm telling you, man, the Raptors are heading into the offseason in the perfect place. They used the last 20 games, 20, 30 games as basically like a extended summer camp or training camp, and they're going to use the summer as well. And you'll see once they get into training camp, this is a team that is going to turn some heads. I'm very positive about this. Clip this, tell me I'm wrong next year. I don't really care. Getting very comfortable being wrong, which is pretty cool. Death 4K. Kate is such a transcendent star. No, he's not. Reminder to everybody, April 17th, Canada Film Day. Free tickets. Link in the description. Definitely go check it out. Xavier Dolan's J'ai tué ma mère. I'm sorry, my French is horrible. It used to be good. It means I killed my mother. And also Chloe Robichaud's Delphine. So great films. Two great films. Two great Canadian films. Arguably two of the greatest Canadian films of all time by two of the best directors from that Quebec has ever produced. And it's happening at Scotiabank Theater. Scotiabank Center. Scotiabank Theater, downtown Richmond Street West. Definitely come check it out. Come say hi to me. Watch some incredible French cinema, and we'll grab some drinks after. Anyways, link is in the description. Tickets while they last. We're going to do a huge email blast tomorrow for that. So, yeah. All right. Take care, guys. Country Kong saying, do you think our defense will bounce back next year? 100%, man. 100%. Yeah, I do. I think they'll finally start to implement some of this stuff. Yeah. All right. Peace, guys.